Welcome, everyone. We'll be getting started in just a moment. I just need to find my speakers. Libby or Damien, did you want me to not invite people? You guys are handling that?
Yep, I can certainly help out with that.
But you want me not to? Is that the deal?
Yep, got it.
I already sent an invitation. Okay, yeah, to Buck. Hi, Buck.
And Melissa.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Brandon.
Oh,
Hi,
Mikey's
everybody.
late. Hi, I'm so shocked. Mikey's late. And then I think we can actually get started because Miyoko messaged me. She got detained. She is coming, but she said she may be a little bit late.
And Mikey is on, so we're good to go.
Oh my God. Oh my God, I couldn't unmute there for a second. I started panicking. All right, well, let's just wait a few more minutes because we literally just opened the room. Oh, and for everyone who's just joined us, can you please take a second and if you're in the space and you're not familiar with spaces, in the lower right, the blue circle with the plus, can you tap that and just tell all of your followers to join us? Just send out a quick tweet, say we've started this amazing space and we would like everyone to come in and join us. Mikey, can we hear from you just to make sure that you're good to go?
Yes, I was tweeting. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, that's fine. You can keep tweeting. Don't let me stop you. I want to make sure that I think I've heard from everybody. And Libby and Damien, do you know what Miyoko's profile looks like? You can find her when she comes in.
I will definitely be vigilant.
I'm not sure if that's a yes or no.
Yes, it is a yes, as in I will go look it up right now and find out exactly what it looks like and search for her name. Make sure we don't miss her.
Yeah, because she has an interesting handle, which is not her name. All right, well, let's, I guess, go ahead and get started. Tiffany, hi, Tiffany Justice. I see you in here, and I hope that you'll be speaking up tonight and asking questions. For everyone here tonight, Tiffany Justice, she's a friend of mine. She's going to be doing future WalkAway event and probably many future WalkAway events. And today, if I may have this, I think I have this correct, she was a featured panelist on CNN going up against George Takei and I don't know, some chick from GLAAD, the president of GLAAD or something, but she was representing America's parents in the fight against the LGBT left on parents' rights issues. Notice I said LGBT left and not LGBT community because tonight we're going to be talking about how not all LGBT people are insane. That's kind of going to be the crux of that. And with that, let's get started. I'm going to introduce everybody tonight to our panelists. So welcome to WalkAway's Deep Space LGBT Thought Leaders. We are very proud of the WalkAway Deep Space events that we've been doing for the last 6 weeks because, as many of you know, I can't leave my damn house. And so we've been doing the best that we can do, up until April 28th, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow. I finally am a free man again. But until then, we wanted to keep working. We wanted to keep, having conversations and making an impact. And so over the last 6 weeks, we've been doing a series of events that we've called Deep Space. We've done a Black Americans thought leaders, Hispanic American thought leaders. We did an event with the sponsors of Florida's HB 1557, the parental rights bill. We did a comedians thought leaders deep space. I'm totally losing my words right now. And tonight is the final one of the series, and then we're taking a couple of weeks off because we're actually planning live events that are going to happen when I'm a free person. Mike, you put your damn hand down. You're going to be able to talk in just a second. But anyway, tonight is WalkAway.
I thought that was high five.
Oh, thank you. I thought you were like, I have a question. Okay, so tonight is our final of the series, and then we're going to be planning live events starting next month and in the month of June. So let me introduce you to our panel this evening. We have, and let me first of all say I'm really excited about tonight's panel. I mean, I'm excited about every event we do, but tonight's gonna be really amazing because we have three new voices to the WalkAway family, which are Buck Angel, Melissa Vitale, and Miyoko Anderson. It's really cool. So I think of all the events that we've done, this is the most like newcomers that we have in one event, and they're really, really amazing. We have every letter of the LGBT acronym represented tonight. We've never had a lesbian. Melissa, you're like breaking our lesbian cherry tonight live in front of everyone on Twitter. We're so excited. So let's start there. Melissa Vitale I found her on TikTok. Thank you, Libby, for introducing me. Melissa Vitale was born and raised in New York City. Melissa has seen firsthand what Democrats are capable of. With no care for politics before the Trump era, she highly credits the WalkAway campaign. You're welcome, Melissa, for helping her find her voice. Now with over 100,000 followers on TikTok, I'm already coming for you, by the way, on that.
Oh, I'm sure you'll catch up very quickly.
She refuses to stay silent. An American lesbian realist with no filter. Ladies and gentlemen, Melissa Vitale.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mikey Harlow has been with us. Well, I think you actually say that in your bio. I'll just read your bio. Mike Harlow is a political commentator that has been with WalkAway since the beginning. He was recently featured on a panel during a live debate in Milwaukee and was also featured at the RNC convention. Despite being Twitter's number one enemy, his message still manages to reach thousands. Mikey, we love you. And then we have Buck Angel. Buck transitioned 29 years ago. He has been on the forefront of transsexual rights ever since. The climate in the trans community has changed to a space that does not align with Buck's mission of self-acceptance and educating the world through love. Today, Buck stands in a middle ground to build bridges where they used to be and have been destroyed with a trans narrative that does not represent the whole community. Very well said. Appreciate you and love having you here, Buck. And Miyoko is not here yet. She did tell me that she is detained and she's going to be a little late, but she is coming. Miyoko is a new friend of mine. So Miyoko Anderson is a Black transsexual woman from Toronto, Canada. She is an active leader and mentor in the Canadian LGBTQ ballroom community, which is cute, ballroom dancing. She also is a singer, songwriter, producer, dancer, and choreographer. Miyoko recently became an actor starring in her first feature film, which will be premiering this year. Politically, she follows policy, regardless of what side it comes from. Imagine that. Shouldn't we all? So let's get started. Speakers, you can unmute yourself. And why don't we start tonight by just kind of giving like a little brief summation of everyone's story. I know I've had conversations with Buck where Buck is like, I don't want to be a Republican. Don't tell people I'm a Republican. So Buck is not a Republican. Buck, why don't you just tell us your story and why, the whole WalkAway thing resonates with you?
Well, I hate these politics these days, so that's why I'm like, just don't even give me a label. How about if I'm just right in the middle there? So first off, thanks everybody for showing up, and thanks Brandon for really reaching out to me and actually guiding me over here. So I feel very honored to be speaking with such great speakers today and really being a part of a movement that I think really cares about what's happening. And I don't think to me, it doesn't matter what political side you're on. This is so important. What this stands for is really what we are all supposed to be doing in this country, which is we're supposed to be, we're supposed to have a democratic space here, and we don't. And so that's why on some level I have left the left, because it's not what I grew up with and not what I resonates or aligns with my message, which is, honesty, reality, truth, justice, And so that's why I sit here today. And being an elder transsexual man, and as you said, transitioning 29 years ago, specifically in the transgender trans space, and it's become a political space. And that's not what trans is about. Trans is a medical space, and it's a space where people have, I have a disorder. And it's really upsetting for me to see where this is going. And honestly, most of my focus is on the kids today, and especially these quote unquote trans kids thing. It's actually absurd, and it makes me feel very scared for the future of me and the future of my. I don't even want to use community. I'll be honest with you all. I don't think community exists, really. And I think community is kind of like this thing that people try to get you trapped into. But I don't believe that community really exists. And I believe that it's sort of like a way to indoctrinate you into a thought process. So that's kind of really why I'm here tonight. And I really always appreciate giving me space to speak. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Buck. Melissa, why don't you go next and tell us a little about yourself and why this resonates with you?
Sure, I would love to. But I just want to say to Buck, I did see your most recent tweet where you said, are there any women who have grown up tomboy or masculine who are still women today and not indoctrinated into being trans because that's what would have happened like in this time? I am one of those people, and I replied to your tweet, and I appreciate you like bringing that to focus, because if I was forced into being a boy just because I dressed like a boy my whole life, I don't think that's the route I would have I would have gone. So I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Mel. I really appreciate that. That tweet, if you see it, it blew up, and it blew up for a reason, because we aren't talking about that. And as you know, I believe in biology, and this whole bullshit about how biology is a social construct. I can't even keep a straight face. How is that even possible? So I appreciate you, but I want to give you the stage, my friend.
Okay, well, thank you. I basically grew up in the 90s where you didn't talk about politics or religion. Nobody ever spoke about that. I didn't grow up in a politically based household. I knew absolutely nothing about politics. 2016, Trump decided to run for office, and it got me interested. I knew who he was. I understand what he was saying. Everyone else, it was just like I'm sitting in a Charlie Brown cartoon and the teacher's going womp 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 every time a president spoke. I just couldn't listen to it. So him and Hillary had the debates. I watched every single one of them, and I resonated more with Trump. And then I found Brandon on Facebook, and the WalkAway campaign, and I was like, a lot of these people are making sense. Like, I didn't know left or right. So I didn't leave the left. I didn't walk away. I walked away from ignorance because I didn't care enough. I have since seeing Brandon's campaign and the walkaway campaign, I have not shut up. So I, have been banned on Twitter. I just made a new Twitter like 3 days ago to be on this. And I'm just sick of staying silent and seeing people get duped by the left. So as many people as I can reach, I will keep going.
Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out, by the way. I meant to say that earlier. Melissa just created a new Twitter account to join us tonight, so I don't want you guys to think she's deeply unpopular, because she has like 2 followers right now.
I'm going to delete it tonight after this.
She's actually very popular and very, very, very funny on TikTok. I mean, really, 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 really funny on TikTok. So go follow her on TikTok. Follow me too.
Yes, follow Brandon first, then follow me.
And Mikey, poor Mikey, he gets banned like from everything every week, so he's always starting over.
I made it 9 days on TikTok from creating my account to getting banned. So if anyone knows how to get unbanned from things. Anyway, though, yeah, my name's Mike. I was a liberal Democrat my whole life. I feel like one thing that every gay person, every trans person, LGBT person experiences is that we're all sort of sold this lie of pride. We're sold the image of the rainbow and love and hope and empathy and all that. And then once we come out and get out into the world and experience this alleged community, we see for ourselves the nastiness, the cultishness. They're the most miserable people I've ever met in my life. So I spent a good decade around these people and wondering why I could never get along with them and why they were so miserable. And I just never had the language or the awareness or the education to be able to say, oh, this is the leftist, Democrat, mainstream LGBT community. And it's only been since walking away from the left that I've sort of found true community that isn't superficial, like having nothing in common except who you want to sleep with. That's not my community. They never were, and I would never want them to be. And it's insane how, if you think about all of the things that they're pushing now go in total defiance of everything that gained us whatever acceptance we have, which is a lot of acceptance. I always think of something Brandon said to me years ago, that he was like, gay people, we're accepted now. We have all this acceptance, and it's like, they don't want it. They don't want it. They would rather feel like they're oppressed. So if you think about, the things that I thought constituted gay rights or LGBT rights, I just was like, I want to have a family, get married someday, have my sexuality be a non-issue in my life. And that has somehow transformed into being told I have to support destroying biology and double mastectomies for 12-year-olds. So I think they're insane. They're making everybody hate us. They are truly the enemy of gay people, especially of transgender people. God, it's horrible. I think they are creating such animosity towards every group, and I think that's by design because they profit. So unfortunately, I think the backlash is not only coming, I think it's here. So that's why I think spaces like this are so important for us to give a different image to the insanity, because in the last election, it was almost 1 in 3 LGBT Americans that voted for Trump. That's not a small minority. So I think a lot of us are done letting them make us think that we're crazy and gaslight us into thinking that we're this tiny little fringe crazy minority. So screw them.
Thanks, Mikey. I did kind of forget before we got started to let you guys know. I don't, Damien, do you want to chime in and kind of let everyone know if they want to ask a question or speak up what they need to do?
Yep, perfect. So just some ground rules in terms of you want to ask any questions. I've pinned Libby's tweet to the very top, so you'll be able to go straight to her profile or click on her co-host icon right there. Please submit any questions directly via DM to Libby. She will respond, and if we're gonna have you come on and ask your question, she will send you an invite. If you could remain muted until prompted by myself or Libby to ask your question, that would be great. Just for anyone that would like to get involved. So please don't send a request. Just if you have a question, please direct message that straight to Libby. Thank you.
Yeah, and we want to hear from as many people as possible tonight. Please don't feel like this. Yes, of course, it's an LGBT space, but as I've been telling people, as we've been kind of advertising this event tonight, to me, I think that one of the biggest hot button issues going into the midterm election is going to be the issue of parental rights and how that's being pushed back on by the LGBT left. So this is really something that affects everybody. And although this is technically an LGBT space, I feel like parental rights is like the new George Floyd going into the 2022 midterms. And this is the crisis that the left is manufacturing, is that LGBT people are being oppressed by not being able to teach 5-year-olds that they can transition their gender or choose their own pronouns. So I want to hear from parents. I want to hear from people on the right. I want to hear from people in the middle. Raise your hand, ask questions, whatever. And why don't we kind of start there? And anyone can speak up. Buck, Mikey, Melissa, do we have Miyoko yet? She's on her way.
Well, I definitely would take that right now.
So, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, right on. So I am a parent. I have a 9-year-old boy, B-O-Y, boy, and he doesn't have any issues around his gender. And I really dislike what's happening. And this, here's the deal. What I think, like, obviously when we start putting that stuff out there, if you go to TikTok, you just see all the teachers all over there talking about how queer they are and how they're painting their classrooms with rainbow flags and trans flags and teaching third graders, that gender isn't real and that you can be a unicorn if you want to be. And I'm just like, this is why everybody hates us. It is 100% why everybody hates us, because kids are very vulnerable. And you don't have to have a kid to know that. We were all kids once. So that being said, we were all either gay kids, trans kids, queer, whatever you want to call yourself. We were all in that space. We all turned out pretty good, if you ask me, without having teachers in our room, telling us about their personal life of being a furry or whatever it's called. And it's just getting so absurd and just so has nothing to do with LGBT spaces, and it's hurting us. I'm getting very upset because I just think, the fact that we brought kids into the conversation and we call them trans kids is so upsetting to myself, because you're labeling a kid straight out the gate. And this kid could be a gay kid. This kid could be a straight kid. This kid could just be playing around with stuff. You don't know if this kid is trans just because all of a sudden he says or she says, I'm trans, which is now an identity choice. And that's the other thing people need to understand. Kids are choosing trans as an identity choice. They're not choosing it for the same reason I chose it, which is I have actually a disorder called gender dysphoria. And when you start telling kids they're trans, they think it's the cool thing to do. And no doubt there are kids out there just like me and just like other trans people who have gender dysphoria, but it's a very small amount. This is not what you think it is and not what it is. So I see on some level an indoctrination in the school system that is not only scaring me as a transsexual person, but also is making the rest of the world very mad, and it's pushing back on us. And now we're in this really weird space that is not okay. And when we bring kids into the conversation, this is what's going to happen.
Hey, but can I ask you what you mean when you say it scares you as a trans?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So great question. So what it means to me is that it scares me because now I'm lumped in with all the wingnuts, and I'm lumped into this conversation, and I'm lumped into a space that says, well, Buck, maybe you didn't have to transition, and maybe, you know what I mean? Or so what I see on some level is it hurting me and people who have actual gender dysphoria, because today you don't need gender dysphoria to be trans, which is so absurd in itself. I can't even believe that just came out of my mouth. But that, so they're saying you can self ID, anyone can be trans, and that is the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life. And now what do we have? 5 million kids saying they're trans and 5 billion kids detransitioning. So now, as you all know, we have a huge number of detransitioners, but the trans community doesn't want to discuss that. And we all know why, because when we start discussing that, it means now we have to discuss why are we having detransitioners. And I'm a huge support to the detransitioners, because I believe they are really gonna help us figure out what the heck is going on here. So yeah, so for me, it just hurts my space because we are not being honest to the world. When we start saying biology isn't real, then we're actually taking away the reason why I'm even a transsexual person. My biology is the reason I'm transsexual, period. No argument, no discussion there. I'm not even going to discuss that. So, does that answer the question?
It does. And, I think I was actually just having this conversation with somebody last night where I feel like so much of what the left does is just this massive overcorrection to something that maybe at one point was like a legitimate thing that needed to be addressed or needed to be, just like feminism. I mean, modern feminism is a huge overcorrection to an actual need for feminism that there once was in our society, but like now it's totally and completely out of hand. And I think it's like you look at it, and there's a story I read on Reddit. I probably shared this on a space a few weeks ago, but I read a story on Reddit a 15-year-old girl wrote, where she said, all of my friends at school were identifying as trans. Everyone was identifying as non-binary. And she was like, I just kind of felt like that was the right label for me too. So I changed my name and I started going by a boy's name. And she was like, my parents were just so overly affirmative, and so were my teachers and everyone at my school, that they're like, oh yeah, you're trans. And her parents actually got her a double mastectomy. And she was on Reddit, and she was like, "I am not a boy, I'm a girl." And she was like, "I totally regret this." Like she was like, "Why didn't somebody stop me?"
Right. Why didn't somebody stop her? So that's why, as you see, I'm the bad tranny. We all know that because I'm the guy who's speaking out on this, and I refuse to let anybody tell me otherwise. You can say whatever you want. There is actual factual stuff out there. Why do we have a group of 28,000? Did you hear me? 28,000 detransitioners on a Reddit group. Why is that happening? And why are we letting young girls cut their breasts off when all they need to be doing is going through a system right now until they figure out? That's why I made that tweet. If you're a woman who was a tomboy, Mel spoke to that. And like Mel, I think bringing you into this right now would be really great because, you even said to me, like, you grew up this way. They would have transed you today on some level.
Yeah, they would have. And I'm almost 100% certain it would have been a regret because I grew up, dressing like a boy. That's how I felt comfortable. I never wanted to be a boy. I just didn't feel comfortable in girls' clothes, the way, the jeans fit, the way the shirts fit. To this day, I still shop in the men's section. But when I go out and people are like, "Oh, what are you?" or "Oh, are you a lesbian?" Yes, and I am proud to still have my body parts, and I love being a woman. Just because I dress like a man and I have a short haircut, I absolutely love being a woman. And I've met other lesbians who are not trans who really don't appreciate their own body. Um, but I've never had an issue being a woman. I just look better this way. I always say that to people. Like I just look good this way.
Yeah, and so that being said, that's why you, my friend, are so important in the world right now because there are young kids who don't see that they can be okay being a masculine woman or being butch. And I saw this coming years and years ago, and it's this. I talk to a lot of detransitioners, and I'm around that, and I see how they're literally pushed into this space, and then 2 years later, they're like, "Whoops, I made a mistake." This isn't a "whoops, I made a mistake," people. Everyone listening here. This is not a "whoops, I made a mistake." This is detrimental to the health of that person for the rest of their life when they cut their breasts off, get a hysterectomy, grow a beard, and then turn around and say, "I made a mistake." It's not that easy. And it's, as you see, I get very upset about it because these are kids, they're young people.
I kind of I wanted to piggyback off of what you said that that you have a disorder and it's because of your biology that you're transgender. I had brought up the whole thing about the pronouns. Okay, everyone can do what they want, fine. You want me to call you something when you're not around, fine. I don't understand what the difference is. But when people I feel like it's more offensive to people who do have gender dysmorphia or they're going through something that the kids that are just trying to do it to be cool aren't understanding. If I see somebody whose name is Tom and he's a big muscular guy and he's obviously a biological man, but he has him in his bio, I feel like that's offensive to people who are really going through this whole gender, trying to figure out what they are. Like they would be kind of like, well, yeah, duh, I knew you were a boy. And it's kind of like depressing. That's how I see it.
Right on.
And
I totally, I'm going to piggyback off that because I'm going to tell you that for me, it's insulting.
Right.
I had a quote unquote sex change, okay, to look, feel, walk the world as a man. If you're going to ask me my pronouns, then my sex change sucked. And then that sucks. And I have to go back and work hard.
Right.
So for me, and also for the rest of the world, for this small group of people to push on us so that we make them feel better is the most insane thing I've ever done. I don't do the pronoun thing, by the way. I refuse
Yeah.
to.
These allies don't realize that to the people it's really affecting, it's negatively affecting. Like they're not doing any good.
And the whole pronouns thing goes to show how none of this is for the benefit of trans people. There isn't one person here, not Buck, not me, not anybody, who anyone would need to ask our pronouns. It's not
Right.
for trans people. It's to remake society in their image. It's to feed the egos of these bored straight liberals.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Nobody spends all of that time and money transitioning just for somebody to ask their damn pronouns.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, I work hard. I go to the gym. I grow a beard. You know, I cut my boobs off. I really make a huge effort to like walk the world as a man. And the majority of the world sees me as a man. It's that weird community that pushes back on me. And, you know, it's like my own quote unquote community is pushing on me, which is so ridiculous.
And I think everybody is starting to feel like they have to take this very hardline stance on transgender people, that either you accept all of the insanity and there's no gender, there's no biology, there's no nothing, or you have to just totally not accept transgender people and nope, man is man, woman is woman, that's it. So it's to the detriment of all of us.
I can't even imagine how growing up now would be, because like I said, I grew up in the 90s. I went to transgender bars because they were, you know, restaurants and bars. There's a place called Lips in the city. I think it's still open. One of my friend's mother's friend's son was one of the entertainers there. So we grew up knowing, I forget what his name was, but we knew him. And then at night we knew her. But we never questioned anything. Nothing had to be explained to us. We just were there. You know?
I knew you were a New Yorker as soon as I heard you say 100%.
100%.
Yes.
And we have our first question, guys, as well. So I just want to remind people before we go to our first question that there is a pinned tweet at the top. If you do want to speak, please submit your question to Libby Albert via DM. And I did fail to drop in the reminder. If you do want to speak, you have to do it via your phone, not the desktop. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Twitter hasn't figured that out. So Volcanicus Rex, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a video been floating around the past few days of this person who identifies as non-binary, and she's breaking down into tears and basically begging for some sort of friendship or real relationship. And in the comments on the video were a whole bunch of replies saying, you know, if you weren't so weird, you might have better relationships, but, you know, browbeating people just does not work. And this is probably not the only person in the gender spectrum, I guess, for lack of a better word, who feels that way, that they don't have any real relationships. So my question is, how can we actually try to reach out to these people and try to make some kind of a connection and try to start breaking down the walls?
Well, that's a great question. And I think it has to come from both sides. It can't just be one-sided. So I think just my own experience with trying to actually have communication with non-binary or people in that specific space, they don't seem to want to meet in the middle on some level. It's either their way or the highway. So, you know, I think the problem for myself and what I see is that nobody over there is willing to give an inch, and they expect everyone to sort of come on their side. And, you know, it's a very victim-y space, I think I see today in the trans non-binary space. I see a lot of victim-y sort of, you know, woe is me kind of thing. Like, for example, someone saying that, or for example, I see a lot of trans people saying, well, you have to date us because if you don't date us, then you're transphobic. Like, sure, that's going to actually make somebody want to date you. I mean, so I personally believe that, you know, there has to be some of the other side coming over towards us, and they're not doing that from my own experience.
I think people are also afraid to get out of their phone and make real life connections. It's almost impossible if you're not, you know, working in an environment that has a lot of people where you can make friendships. Maybe you make friends at the gym. You have to talk to people. You can't beg strangers to love you on the internet while you cry. You can't do it. It just doesn't work. Because at the end of the day, when you turn your phone off, you're alone. So you have to pick and choose where you're gonna make relationships, and, you know, maybe go out for coffee, sit in Starbucks. Who knows? you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think you kind of have to lead with friendship and then let the politics and the issues and the cultural stuff follow that. I mean, that's kind of what happened for me. I'm sure it's true for a lot of people that as soon as I started meeting people who I had been told hate me and are, the bad people my whole life, as soon as I started meeting them, I realized they were nothing of the sort. But that's what I was talking about when I say I think everyone is being pushed into this hardline stance, that when you see the things that are happening that are so disturbing, people just automatically feel like they have to be on the polar opposite side of that issue. So there's definitely gray area.
I really appreciate the guy who asked the question, because I have such an appreciation for somebody who wants to like make that effort and have that openness. And I know that like what I'm about to say is like all the things you're not supposed to say at all, but like I just I feel like we live in such deeply divided political times. It's so difficult to reach across the aisle and even just have like a nice, reasonable conversation about the weather or how your food tastes or anything with anybody on the other side anymore, because there's just so much antipathy and hatred across the aisle on both sides. And like, I'm sorry to say this, and it's very I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but like stereotyping or something, I guess. And I'm sure that every one of us who's LGBT, people probably look at us and just assume we're diehard liberals. But Mikey and I talk about this all the time. Like, I've never met a non-binary person who's a Trump supporter. I've never met a non-binary person who's a Republican. It's like, to me, it seems much more a political position than an actual condition that actually exists. And so, and I don't think it's a coincidence that oftentimes non-binary people have purple hair, and that they, I mean, it's like, it's very much a political thing. And so I don't really feel like somebody who identifies that way is going to be open to having a conversation with me either, because I don't believe it. Like Buck is a transgender person, that Mikey and Melissa are gay and lesbian, but we're not politically on the left, and we can have conversations with all different types of people. But I just feel like this is sort of like a culty sort of sect of people who are identifying under the umbrella of LGBT, and I don't think that most of them actually are LGBT, and I question if they would be open to having those relationships with people who don't agree with them politically.
I just want to
think
say that
neither.
I dyed my hair purple for like 2 months just to really throw people off. Just want to
Well,
say that.
did you identify as trans during that period of time?
No, I identified as a liberal,
You didn't
and
do it
then I
right.
tricked them.
Yeah, I think though what's happening also is that there are a lot of people who just have problems that are latching onto this as a way to ignore their real problems. It's much easier to just say, "Oh, trans," than to do the actual work on yourself and see and pay attention to the things that are wrong with you, which is quite a lot in some cases.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute again. Do we have Miyoko in the room? Is that what you guys are talking about? Olivia and Damien?
No, she's still not here.
Oh, sorry. I thought you just said that you found her. Sorry about that.
No.
But we do have an additional speaker. Christopher is in the room.
Great.
Has a question for the panel, so we can go to Chris if you'd like.
Sure.
Chris, feel free to unmute.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hello.
Great.
Brandon is always, awesome listening to you, man, and several folks on here, Buck and others, have put out some really good videos and some different things, and so I wanted to just let you know, like, so long time ago, as in like, let's see, was that 2016? This kind of issue as it related to trans gender identity laws and whatnot were addressed when I was in a kind of a little bit of a public position, and at some of the local schools, this was kind of already quietly being instituted. And so some constituents of mine had concerns about it, right? And so I started looking into it and clearly kind of voiced a few things. And when I did look into it, because listen, I love everybody, but there's just some things that that we're going to disagree on, right? And that's okay. It's not offensive, but and one of them is like the issue as it relates to gender identity laws, and having boys in a girl's locker room at when they're minors and those kinds of things. As a father of a girl, I had just had some concerns myself, and so I started looking into it. But my point of the question and the points I wanted to ask the panel back then, when I was looking, I think it was like I can't remember the exact site, but it was basically like a predominant pro-trans group. And the statistics they used back then was like 1 in 16,000 or something like that were actual transgender folks, right? Like that had what some would say gender dysphoria, but like they genuinely felt that way. And if you actually look at the statistics, it probably was a lot more rare as about 2012, which I think was kind of the last pure, what I would say, somewhat pure year before all the politics started really kicking in. To really kind of look at the true statistics. And I think in 2012, it was like 1 in 32,000 or something like that. So my question for the panel, like today, it's insane. Like I think I read a statistic, it was like 40% of students, maybe it was girls, it could have been both male and female, identified as non-binary and a combination of non-binary, trans, and asexual, and some of these other categories. And so my question for the panel is, what are your thoughts on the statistics changing so rapidly to this point? And then my final follow-up on that is also your thoughts on if you've read Barry Weiss's book on this topic and how she kind of relates it to, I think we all kind of grew up, at least most of us grew up in the 80s and the 90s when, in school, and the bulimia and anorexia, right, was a big deal back when we were younger, and she kind of relates this to that. Like, I think what she actually says is that they would have been the bulimia and anorexia crowd back in the 90s, right? And I
Totally.
and I do have relatives that had severe anorexia and bulimia, and they were put in hospitals and had to be taken care of for that. But I just kind of was just curious about your guys' thoughts on all that.
Well, I can jump in real quick. I actually just saw a poll that was on the news recently, where I think it was on Laura Ingraham, where they were saying that now, God, this makes me so angry. That basically, like, they were saying that LGBT people are now 20% of the population, where, like in the 90s and the 80s, I think it was like 7% or 9% or something. And now it's like 20%. And it's like, no, there's not something in the water. It's not like COVID. It's not, you can't just like catch LGBT. It's the reason why this is happening is because now you're calling everything. It's because there's 75 freaking letters on the acronym now. And by the way, what 13, 14-year-old girl knows if she's asexual or not? I mean, that's like, how do you know in 7th grade if you're asexual? Like, what are we doing? This is so stupid. So this is the whole thing. It's like you're taking awkward teenagers, and honestly, even more insidiously, I've heard a lot of stories about people, I mean, sorry to use this word because I'm sure a lot of people are going to get triggered, but groomers who are in the LGBT community who are preying upon vulnerable young teenage children. And I'm not saying preying upon them because they want to sexually molest them. That is not even what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that I think that these people probably have a lot of psychological issues of their own that they never worked through. And their way of kind of exercising that is to try to find young people that they can somehow kind of groom and relate to and say, like, oh, I know what you're going through. I went through this too. Let me help you. You're trans, you're non-binary, whatever. Well, I've heard stories about these kind of groomer people kind of targeting autistic kids, awkward kids, like vulnerable young people who already are kind of going through stuff. And so you start telling people that every issue that they have in their lives, like, oh, you're a 13-year-old who feels uncomfortable in your body. How unusual. You must be trans. Well, Christ, I mean, in 5 years, 95% of the population is going to be trans. Like, at this rate, if we're just now calling everything, oh, you're overweight, you must be trans. You have acne, you must be trans. So I think there's just this, again, overcorrection that's leading to these warped statistics.
Well, also, I think puberty is a very difficult space to be in. And me being a biological female, I went through female puberty, and I actually grew up in the 60s. I'm old, people. So I grew up in the 60s and 70s, the whole other level where we didn't have social media. We didn't have I'm going to say it again. I do believe and I don't want to use the word indoctrination, though I do feel on some level it is that. Social media is the thing all the kids are on, and being trans is cool now. I'm watching it happen. It's like, kids, 13, 14-year-old kids with top surgery dancing around on TikTok, showing off their top surgery with no nipples. I am appalled at that. That is not trans. When people like myself who admit to my disorder, who admit to my mental health problem, who knows that I need to take medication and that I'm medicalized and that I have to move forward in the world this way, look at things like that as an insult. Not only that, these kids are going to grow out of that. And then what are we going to do? Because I mark my words here tonight. These kids are going to be so messed up. Who's going to take care of them? Is it going to be me? Am I going to have to do it because I'm the elder of the community? Is it going to be you because you sat there and didn't say anything? Whose problem is this going to be? Because I guarantee you we're going to have a huge problem on our hands in the next 5 years. It's already happening. And it's why I sit here and speak out with such passion, with tears. I actually have tears in my eyes right now because this cannot be happening. This cannot be happening to children. I don't care about adults. I mean, I do, but I do know that adults can make a choice. Children cannot make a choice. They're vulnerable. They're listening to adults. Adults are leading them down this space. Medical people are leading them down this space. I don't know what's happening with this quote unquote trans community, but it's sick and it's weird. And the fact that we are letting children have some kind of surgery to remove their breasts at 13 years old is not okay. And where is everybody? Where is everybody? Why are we not speaking up about this? Why is it just a very handful of people? I don't care if you're scared or not. We have a future of kids that are going to be maimed, screwed up, mentally ill to the tens, to the thousands. And then what are we going to do?
That is exactly what they want to happen. Because then they'll have some sort of treatment for this, some sort of treatment for that. They'll have everybody on the same, everybody needs this medicine. Oh, here's a new vaccine that cures this. And it's literally, they want to destroy people. Like, they just want to destroy us physically and mentally. That's why everybody is against everybody. If you literally shut the news off, don't look at social media, the world is fine. There's nothing going on. And you can develop really good relationships. And it's sad with, the kids and the schools, because I idolized some teachers when I was younger. Did I know their first name? Absolutely not. Did I know if they were gay, straight, married, kids? No. It was just they were there to teach. And they weren't there to tell me what I should be. They just told me how to make it.
Also, what is with the no nipples? Oh my God, Buck, what is with why do I keep seeing all these pictures of these young teenagers with no nipples? Who took their nipples?
Oh my God, my friend, they're literally telling these kids that it's cool not to have nipples. You know that the surgeons, these
Why?
are surgeons telling the kids, you don't need nipples. What? First off,
Why?
nipples are very important, not only to your own self-awareness of who you are, but they also are an erogenous zone on some level. And we are literally desexualizing kids. That's a desexualization space. And those doctors and those surgeons should lose their license. I don't know how we're I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Sorry. I get so mad because it's kids. These are kids. They follow. Kids follow. Kids are vulnerable.
Hey guys, I think Tiffany actually has a question. So Tiffany, if you're ready to speak up, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Tiffany.
It got
Okay.
real quiet.
I hope
Sorry.
CNN didn't do anything to her.
Yes, you're. Well, while she's figuring it out, I'm gonna, I guess, kind of jump in on the points you guys were making too, and say that, one thing I'm trying so hard to get this point out to people, because it's understandable that people don't know this and they don't understand it. But like, for those of us, I'm not as old as Buck. Nobody is as old as Buck, but I am of a certain age myself, and I can remember a time when organizations like the Human Rights Campaign, the NAACP, some of these civil rights organizations actually did some decent work, and they actually had a purpose, and they were actually fighting some legitimate injustices that were happening in the world. What has happened, in my opinion, is that we've gotten to this place of really kind of normalizing most LGBT issues here, at least in this country. I wish they would put some focus on LGBT people who are being murdered in countries around the world and actually care about them a little bit. But these CEOs and the executive directors and the higher ups in these organizations, like the Human Rights Campaign, like GLAAD, I looked this up last night. The president of GLAAD is paying herself almost $400,000 a year. The executive director of the Human Rights Campaign pays himself $575,000 a year. That's a lot of money. They have to bring in a lot of donations to justify those salaries. And by the way, the Human Rights Campaign, it's the top 14, 15 people, maybe even more, but definitely at least the top 14 or 15 are making about $300,000 a year or more. So they have to bring in millions of dollars a year just to pay their top executives. And there's not that many causes to raise money on anymore. I mean, we have marriage equality, we have equal opportunity in almost every way. And this is another thing that drives me crazy too. All of these people who are screaming and shouting about the Don't Say Gay bill, and they're like, oh my God, what about the poor elementary school children, who are going to feel awkward? I'm like, how are they ever going to feel awkward? They're throwing parades every day in these schools for gay kids. I mean, every day is a freaking gay parade, and they're celebrating everybody who's coming out for every condition that they're like. Who's ever even going to know that there is injustice towards LGBT people, let alone feel awkward about it? But anyway, that's why they're making up all of these oppressive causes so that they can keep money rolling in to pay these people. It's a huge grift. At this point, like Jussie Smollett, Jussie Smollett might as well be the head of the Human Rights Campaign at this point, because it's all a huge hate crime grift. Do we have Tiffany back?
We don't, but we do have somebody lined up. Ms. Meeseeks has a question. So Ms. Meeseeks, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, I had a question for Buck. I was wondering if you could tell us what you think the difference is between someone who's truly gender dysphoric and someone who is, maybe going through puberty right now and is just uncomfortable with being a lesbian or uncomfortable with their body. What do you think are the true differences there that a lot of people are not paying attention to? The difference between someone who's having a hard time just socially or whatnot and someone who is truly dysphoric.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's an excellent question, my friend. So first, I just want to make the disclaimer: I'm not a doctor, so I'm just going to say that right there. That being said, what that there is a thing called therapy, and there is a thing called mental health care, and that has been completely removed from the sort of structure that I went through. I went through an actual structure where I had to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a therapist. For a couple of years, I had to live in the gender that I wanted to live in. And then from there, I could go to the doctor and get hormones, but I had to have a letter done by my therapist who really monitored me and I had to do that for 2 years before I could even start taking any kind of hormonal supplement. So today, what I see is kids are not going through that system. We have something now called self-ID, where anyone can just say they're trans without any type of assessment, any type of mental health care. So for me, the difference of today and what I'm going through and the kids, I find that if you're going through some system, then you are going to figure out whether or not you have actual gender dysphoria, or you don't, and you could just be a very butch woman or a feminine man or whatever that situation is. But today, I think the number one problem is that the kids are not being assessed, and that they can self ID themselves, and you don't need to have any of the structure in place. And if you say you're trans, you can have top surgery, you can have, hysterectomy, you can have all these things. So gender dysphoria is something that is a diagnosis, and it's not a self diagnosis. It's a diagnosis from an actual professional person who was trained in a space called trans health, who understands. Now, today we have something called affirmative therapy, which is a total joke. That is not therapy. Affirmative therapy says that when that child or that person walks in the office and says, I'm trans, you are not allowed to push back on that person. I'm like, what? That's what therapy is. Therapy is to push back on you. That's why I had 2 years of therapy that my therapist did push back on me until we finally realized, no, I really do feel this way, and it really is something I want to do. So I hope I answered the question enough, because I can't tell you whether or not a child is dysphoric the way I am or not, but the fact that they're saying you do not need dysphoria to be trans should be the first clue that we are headed down a very scary path.
Hey, Buck, can I ask you, because I know that, like, at least, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, it was a requirement that if you wanted to transition, you had to live as the opposite gender for like at least a year or something like that. Do they still have rules like that in place?
No, they do not, except for certain therapists like Dr. Erica Anderson. She's one of my great best friends, and she's a really great therapist, and she believes what I believe. And so she makes her client, her clients or people go through, a year or so of living as that gender. And, it saved my life. It really did. I would not be here today if I didn't go through all of that assessment, took my time. I don't know why everybody's in such a rush. That's what has my hair standing up. Why are you in such a rush to transition a child so fast? That could be the biggest mistake you ever make. So what if the kid is struggling a little bit with their gender? So what? We all struggle with stuff, and on some level, struggle is an important thing to do, an important thing. If we're just going to let kids not struggle, how are they even going to walk through life? You have to struggle at some time in your life in order to understand the real world is a struggle. You're not going to get everything handed to you. And today we're just handing kids stuff like it's just, okay, we don't want you to get upset. Here you go. You know what happens with those kids, those spoiled kids? They turn into total little brats. So, this is, and I know I'm sort of making a joke out of it, but it really, I've never looked back. I've never looked back. It has been the most insane, amazing thing that has ever happened to me. I'm the most happiest tranny in the world because I made the right choice, and I've never looked. Why haven't I looked back? Why are so many kids today looking back and saying, oh my God, I made a mistake?
And we do have our next question ready to go. Bridget, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hey guys, thank you so much. And actually, I know you guys were looking for Tiffany. She's a friend of mine, and I know she had to jump off. But I'm a school board member in Sarasota County. I have been working on these policy elements, and broadly speaking, as it are now termed, parental rights pieces of it. A lot of it spawned, not exclusively, but there was the components that we would find under guidelines that is pushed across the country about keeping, directing staff to keep things, basically, broadly speaking, from parents. And I just wanted to get your take on that. I mean, you guys covered a lot of things that I think are so important, so I appreciate that. But I just wanted to, particularly Buck, if you had any insight on that, or any of the panel. I think it's such an important component. And when you think about the difference, the impact, especially in prepubescent ages or during puberty, and the challenges that all of us probably went through, and the risks. But I just really wanted to get some insight on your thoughts from the parental involvement piece.
So does someone else want to take this first, and then I'll come second?
I'm down. I think it's very deliberate that the reason that that the left and the media marketed this bill as the "Don't Say Gay" bill. There's a reason that they have focused this entire issue around sexual orientation, because they know that there's a lot more consensus with that. And sexuality being pushed on kids is definitely a problem, but this gender ideology being pushed on kids is the problem. So they're trying to divert focus from that, basically. And all of this is really deliberate. I mean, if you look at the gender closet, they're calling it, that's happening in a bunch of schools, where these kids will be encouraged to come to school as their given gender, change clothes to dress as the opposite sex, and then change back before they go home and keep it all a secret from their parents. So these are government schools, government workers, and this is exactly what cults do. It is drawing a wedge between the individual and the family. And I really think this entire thing is about the destabilization of society.
I think it's very harmful for if this is really going on where kids can, go to school as one thing, change and go home as the same thing. I eventually it's going to implode. Like when I kept secrets from my parents, they always knew. So if you don't know what someone's situation is at home, maybe they have very strict parents, maybe they have parents who do not like LGBT, which everyone has their own right to think the way they want. You can't argue that. Everyone has a right to their own thoughts. That's yours. But if you know you have a parent who is totally against this whole thing, finds out that maybe their son is dressing like a girl in school, do you think that something's not gonna happen at home when they find out? I think it's very, very dangerous. It's a very thin line that parents need to know what's going on.
Right. Yeah, 100% on board with all of you. I find it really insane that we are trying to teach gender to K through third and sexuality. Like I said earlier, I have a 9-year-old. I can't even imagine if that was being taught. And what about parents who don't want kids to be taught that and they want to do it at their own? I want to do that in my own space. I don't want him to learn about that in school. I want to talk to him about it and have a conversation as a family. So I also see this idea of breaking up family. This has been a huge part of my platform, is keeping kids with their families. I encourage kids to talk to their family. I encourage kids, kids when they're starting to transition always go through some kind of turmoil with their parents. I mean, that's just normal. And so I encourage kids to understand and be compassionate and empathetic towards their parents. They're losing their daughter or their son, who are becoming their daughter or their son. And it's my parents had a horrible time with it. And so because of that, I have a lot of time under my belt with this and understanding how parents are. But parents love their kids. Majority of parents only want the best for their kids, and there's a small amount of parents, of course, who are not going to be okay with it. The majority of parents only want their kids to grow up happy and successful and alive. And so I just really, what I see happening in the school is everything what you guys said. It's some form of indoctrination, some form of splitting up families. It's just actually absurd.
Awesome.
Mikey, one second. Mikey and I have obviously been friends for a long time, and we have seen each other through some very difficult times through our. We didn't transition like some other people on the panel did, but we did transition from the left to the right, which probably was worse. But I mean, there are times that Mikey and I have kind of laughed our way through a lot of stuff. There are times that we've been on the brink of tears because our community is so god awful sometimes to deal with. Mikey, do you remember the time that you called me and you told me?
I was just gonna say that.
Mikey said he was just beside himself, just in rage, and he called me and he's like, Brandon, there is a story out about a family, and he's like, the entire family is trans. And I literally spit. I was drinking something and I spit it across the room and burst out laughing. Literally, the mom, the dad, and all of the kids were trans. Okay, sorry, that wasn't even the point of what I was saying. You remember that?
Wait,
Mikey?
do you remember though the other one? This was before you even started WalkAway, where these activists were creating laws to make it legal to intentionally give someone HIV.
Right. Yes, I do remember that. God. Yeah, I'm gonna get mad again. Okay, so don't. But what I was gonna say was that, and I know you're gonna have a lot to say about this. So Mikey and I watched that whole horrific reboot of Sex and the City, and just like that. And there's this episode where the character of Charlotte now has these two kids who are like teenagers, and of course, you know, because they have to do every woke storyline they can possibly think of. So one of Charlotte's teenage uh, kids is now non-binary. And there's a scene where the parents are called into the school to have a meeting with like the guidance counselor and the principal, and the guidance counselor and the principal are sitting down the parents and basically telling the parents, your child has a boy's name now. Your child identifies, I don't remember if it was they, them, or if she identified as a boy or whatever. But it was like really chilling watching that scene, because I do believe that kind of conversation is happening all the time these days with parents. And even as a gay person who is actually a member of this community, if I was sitting across from somebody who was telling me, your child is not the gender you think that your child is. And I mean, the underlying tone was kind of like, either get on board with this or we're calling CPS, was almost like the feeling that it was very chilling. And I don't know. I mean, Mikey, what do you think? Right?
Oh, and they were so close to getting it. They were so close to getting it. And this was a 12-year-old girl in the show, by the way. They were so close to getting it. So then they have the totally emasculated father and the mother with their heads down, leaving the office after. And of course, they're not going to allow them to not get on board with it. But the closest they get to that is the father goes, oh, you know, it's very humbling for someone who is not your child's parent to tell you what your child is. It's humbling. I'm like, you moron. It is repugnant. It's satanic. It's demonic. It's not humbling, you moron. And when I have kids someday, God help the teachers who try to pull that shit with my
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. Mikey,
See what
you and I will probably end up old and alone, so we'll just have children
That's
together.
true.
Can you imagine we both go in there as a united front against these teachers? Ooh.
We'll need to like be each other's backup.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Let's hear from Todd.
Hey, Brandon, how you doing? Hi, Libby.
Hey, Todd.
Hi, Todd.
I have really been enjoying listening to Buck. By the way, don't feel bad. You're not the oldest in here, I assure you. But Brandon had said something, and it occurred to me. You know, I don't. I really have more of a comment than a question. But you know, I've been out and proud for 43 years, and I feel like, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in my generation that feel this way. I feel like I'm in this whirlwind of alphabet soup and pronouns and all that stuff. Brandon brought up he used the term binary. Honest to God, I was like, oh God, I got to go to Google and get I don't know. I had to Google binary, non-binary, excuse me, because I honestly didn't know what it actually meant. I'm not, it's not that I'm stupid. It's just that I don't have any interest. It's just not something I care about. All these pronouns and everything after LGBT, I don't even want to talk about. You know, I don't know what half those letters mean. And so the point I'm trying to make is that I think there's a lot of people like myself that are gay and just, you know, living their lives, and we don't really focus on or think about or even understand a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world we live in. And so I just kind of wanted to make the point, and I'm just absorbing what you guys are talking about. I'm so, Buck, you just, you know what, I'm so in awe of what you've done. And Mikey, you always impress me. You're always so insightful. But it's just
Thank you.
It's just a very bizarre place that I find myself in, because I mean, I lived in LA for 20 years. You'd think that I'd be more in tune with everything, but I honestly did not know what I lived a very sheltered life growing up in a military family. I didn't even know what a transsexual was. I thought a drag queen and a transsexual was the same thing, basically. And you'd think that I would have known more about it, because I don't know if you all know who Alexis Arquette is. I think he passed away, but I remember seeing him around and about in LA, and I think he was trans, or was he a drag queen? I don't know. Again,
Alexis Arquette was trans.
Okay, so but I didn't know the difference, and I know that sounds like horrible, like what a dummy, but it's just that I didn't have any people like that in my circle, so I didn't really understand it. It wasn't until the Diane Sawyer interview with Bruce Jenner that at the time was Bruce Jenner. That was this big coming out TV special, and I didn't believe, when I grew up, he was like a hero, and I didn't believe it was true. That was really happening. I was just, my jaw hit the ground when the TV came on and he was doing this interview, and I listened to every 2 hours, and I learned, what actually these people go through, and my heart just ached for him and all people that are in, because I know how hard it was to come out as gay, and all the angst and the guilt and everything, we all know, in our young, teenage years and stuff like that, even into our adulthood. And it's like on steroids if you're trans, I'm sure, the kind of stuff you go through. So I kind of wanted to make that point. And the only other thing that I wanted to say is, for me, I grew up in a very Christian family, and a problem that I've always dealt with being gay, that I've had to just fight off, is the guilt, the Christian guilt. And I don't let it bother me until there's this Christian somewhere that throws it in your face, or it's just kind of plays the holier than thou sort of card. And they're, I love my gays, but you're all going to hell, type of thing. And so the other day, something happened on Twitter. This woman, she put up something from Focus on the Family, and it was this woman who was a lesbian, but she converted, and she was telling her story of how she went from gay to straight, and this whole how it tied into scripture and all this stuff, which I can't be bothered with on that level. But I was literally watched that, and it was for 2 days. I was like just upset because all over again, because I felt this guilt, and I really had to shake that. So I think a lot of people go through, if they were raised in Christian families, even though my family loves me, and they just, like someone said, most parents just want you to be happy. That's how my parents are. But you still run into that religious sect that those people can't get past the gayness. So I'm sure you all have dealt with that.
Well, thank you so much for all of that, my friend. And I want to tell you that I just recently spoke on called Turning Point America, and his name is Charlie Kirk, and he's a Christian, a hardcore Christian, and I'm not. And we discussed me being trans, and also we discussed pornography, because if any of you don't know, I started my career in pornography. But and I'm also I do support porn on some level. That being said, he would not budge in his beliefs, and he was very self-righteous. And so how I handled it was I just let him be that way, and I didn't disagree on some level. I just said that's okay. And he kept throwing the morals. Everybody loves to do the morals thing, right? But they forget that my morals are different than your morals, and like we don't have the same morals, but he thinks that we're all supposed to have the same morals. So in a space where I was being sort of pushed against using the Bible and using Christianity, how I came to it and how I walked away from him, becoming friends, and now we're friends. And I had so many Christians write me on the YouTube thing saying, thank you so much, Buck, you really just articulated it so well, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that you are or what you do, but you made me see, because you're rational and you were calm and you were direct and you weren't pushing, and you just accepted that he thinks this way and you think so. My point being is that I have learned to not sort of be angry and not to push, but to say, just listen to what I'm saying to you. And I get it. If you don't like me, that's okay. But I think what we need to understand is we need to start learning to respect each other's spaces. That's what's gone out of everything, is respect for our differences, respect for our choices, and then we start to build bridges. Because if anybody knows me, I like to build bridges. It doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. It just means that we all live on this planet Earth, and we have to start learning how to live together and having different ways of being. And so the Christian thing can get a little rough, but I just learned to understand that people have different ways of being, and that's okay. As long as you respect my space, I'll respect yours.
Awesome. I think we have another question. I think I got the order right. I think Greg, you've had your hand up for a while, and the next up.
Yeah, so my question is pretty much for Brandon and Buck. So this is a first-hand example. Actually, we were talking a lot about the Florida law and the K through 3. Well, so I picked up my kid today from school. He's in 6th grade. He's 12 years old, and he told me, "Hey, Dad, we had today puberty class." So I asked him, "So how did it go?" So he's like, "Well, it's the same thing that we went through last year in the 5th grade. However, we didn't really cover the whole puberty. Pretty much the whole class was the teacher, not the teacher, but like some lady that he never ever saw before came in, and the whole thing was, well, if you have a penis, it doesn't mean you are a boy. If you have a vagina, it doesn't mean you are a girl, and you can be whatever you want." And pretty much the whole talk went over the whole thing like this. And then the whole very important things, like you have to remember the pronouns and, like, pay attention to this. So he was really, really distracted about this. And like, I understand the Florida law, K through 3, but like this is 6th grade, and this is something that should be left to the parents. I already sent an email to the teacher, like pretty much who approved this class, without parents' knowledge, and like why is my kid being in this class without me accepting it. So I just want your guys' opinion on it. It's like it was really, really disturbing to him.
I just want to jump into this question actually, because I'm not sure what the end game is here. Because let's say, for example, your son says, okay, well, maybe I am a girl, and he learns all about the puberty that women go through. When he doesn't go through that, it's going to mentally destroy him. I'm not sure what the end game is with all of this gender nonsense and kids, because we're very vulnerable when we hit puberty, and that's of all ages. But that's insanity that your son's school did that.
I struggle with. I mean, I know I have a pretty good idea why they're doing it, and it's not just one reason. So it's not like it's like super mystifying, but it's just astounding to me, I guess, that we're talking about a condition that like 0.01% of the population will ever legitimately encounter, and that this is being treated as like the most important lesson to teach kids right now in sexual education, or when they're learning about puberty. And I actually am not one of those people who's like, just because something doesn't affect many people doesn't mean it's not important. Or I mean, I think it can be mentioned. I think if a child comes to a teacher and says, like, look, I'm having these feelings, whatever, I think certainly there should be compassion. There should be sources and conversation. But I mean, teaching 100% of the kids something and making it sound like, you flip a coin and this could happen to you. Like, heads, you're going to be trans; tails, you're not going to be trans. That's just not the way it is, or the way that it ever used to be. So it's just so weird to me that there's a prioritization of this. But at the same time, I really feel like, again, this is something that is very political. It's being pushed by people of one political persuasion who support one political party. And to me, it's a win-win for them, because either A, they're going to be indoctrinating and recruiting future progressives and little future Democrats and training them at an early age that anybody who questions what they claim to be their identity or what they believe in is a bigot, or that there's something wrong with them. And then the alternative is that, even if they don't get to fully indoctrinate all of the kids that they want to indoctrinate, they're at the very least, I think, teaching them that they, which political party that they need to support, because maybe I'm repeating my point. But anyway, yeah, I mean, the point is that they're either going to indoctrinate you, or they're going to teach you that anybody who opposes you is wrong and a bigot, including your parents. Don't trust your parents. Don't trust the people around you. It's really scary.
Yeah, and to speak on that, I also want to say why are we even having this conversation and lying to children? They are lying to children. Biology is an actual factual thing. Well, I think you said that, Mel. Like now these kids are going to grow up and go like, wait a minute here, I have a penis. I thought I was a girl. And like, what? And then like all confused about what a boy and a girl looks like. That has not, to be trans, biology is attached to it. That is so upsetting to me that they, and also what you keep saying, Brandon, is like 0.5%, if even, I might even be making it bigger. It's a very small amount of trans people. So it's something else. And I think you hit it on the head, Brandon. It is something else because there's, how are we actually getting this into the school system? My kid goes to a private school, by the way, just for this reason, because I will not be having this stuff done with my child because it's a lie. We are teaching children lies. And that is what I think is just disturbing, that these are young. And so whoever asked that question and was, I mean, talking about your 12-year-old and the fact that he came home saying this, I would be pissed. And thank you for being pissed. And thank you for speaking to the school, because we need more parents doing that. And we need to stop this as soon as it's going in the school system so fast that we're not able to stop it. So on some level, we parents have to be the ones who start to speak up and put our foot down around this, because the bottom line is there are kids and they're their kids. There are kids. When I see teachers on TikTok going, and I taught my kids, blah, 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 I'm thinking, they're not your kids. You're literally a teacher who's supposed to be teaching my kid math and science and biology and all the things that will help them become a good person in the world, not this nonsense.
Well, I think that's so funny, Buck, because Buck, there's probably like, if you didn't identify as trans and somebody didn't know who you were and they just assumed that you were a biological male, I just think it's so interesting that you actually have a child. You're not like in any way, shape, or form trying to, encourage your child to become trans or LGBT. And yet there's still, and the lengths that you're going to make sure that your child doesn't end up being indoctrinated. And I guarantee you that right now, as we speak, there's like 1,000,001 suburban white gender Karens, suburban moms who would like get in your face and just assume that you're some big, heterosexual bigot or non-trans bigot is what I'm. See, I get confused too. But
Dude,
like you should be the authority on the subject and not somebody who's not even transgender. But I'm sure that there's a lot of people who are not transgender who would think that you're just some
totally
non-transgender bigot.
Yeah, no, but there are some parents who know me and they come after me all the time. And I'm like, hold up, wait a minute, my friend. You're coming after the wrong person. I care about your kid. It's the reason why I am speaking up. To be trans sucks. You think I chose this? I did not choose this. I wish to God I was born a biological dude. That's the thing that people don't understand. This is not a gift. This wasn't given to me as a gift. What was given to me as a gift was the fact that I got to transition and live as a man. But I will tell you right now, no child should be pushed in this space. We should encourage kids to live in their own normal biology space. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to be telling kids to be trans. Being trans sucks. And I hate these goddamn like hashtags, trans is beautiful, trans is this. No, it isn't. It is not beautiful. And if you want to sit here and have a story with me, I'll tell you how horrifying it was for me to go from this space, from the space of living in suicidal thoughts, in alcoholism and drug addiction and all the things that I have been to get where I am today. Why would you want anybody to be like me? And that's what parents need to see. They need to see you need not to be pushing your child in that space. You need to be trying to figure out how to get your child out of this space.
Well, what's scary too is that in Canada they had passed a law, and they're probably going to try to bring it here too, where they're calling anything, any sort of therapy that children or anyone could get that doesn't immediately affirm them as being trans, they're now calling conversion therapy. And then we need to ban conversion therapy. And the things that these kids are being taught, they're not factual. They are being given and portrayed this very rosy, glamorized image. I don't know if you guys heard about in New Jersey, but they just passed this new curriculum for 5th graders, telling them that puberty blockers are a wonderful way to manage life. And they were told puberty blockers are medications that will stop your body from changing. These kids are going to think, oh, I don't want my body to change. I need puberty blockers. They are not being given a full set of facts.
Right. right, my friend. And there are irreversible consequences. The fact that people are saying it's reversible, I can show you anyone in this room right now who leaves this room tonight and needs any information. I will tell you it is factual. It is irreversible. Bone damage, all kinds of stuff is happening. Mostly these are young girls. It's very few young men that are the young boys that are transitioning. It's a 4,000% upswing of young girls. Of course, because puberty for girls sucks. You start getting boobs, you get your period, you don't even know what's going on. All these weird feelings are happening. Of course, you'd rather just lop them off and take testosterone and just like not think about all this shit that's happening to you right now. Of course, if that's the option, you want to go through puberty or you want to be like this, they're going to pick that. That's the thing, is we're not helping these kids just really embrace themselves and who they are. We're telling them who they are as bad and that they could be another kind of person if they want to be.
Hey guys, we need to get to some more questions here. There all of a sudden everybody has questions. Let's see,
That's
Mr.
good.
Whatever, you're next. Mr. Whatever. Okay, we will go to Anon. We'll come back to you, Mr. Whatever. But Anon, if you are available, please unmute yourself.
Hello. Public speaking is one of my worst fears, so bear with me. I write down what I wanted to say, so if it sounds like I'm reading off a piece of paper, it's because I am.
You're doing a great job.
When I see trans women pushing the narrative of trans women are real women, I see someone who is struggling with internalized transphobia. It seems like they are desperately trying to distance themselves from the term trans, treating it like it's a negative thing to be. There isn't anything wrong with being trans, so why does it foster such an intense reaction from them? I feel like it stems from a place of confusion and self-hatred. I will always respect people's pronouns, but I will not ignore biology for others' delicate sensibilities. Thank you for creating this space and fighting for children's rights.
You have a beautiful speaking voice, by the way.
And a
Beautiful.
great point. That was actually a really, really solid point that I'd never thought about before.
They're trying to erase our differences, basically. And what I find it kind of unfortunate is that for me, my personal beliefs, to me, and how I view trans people, how I treat trans people, there's really no difference. Like, Buck, I don't see you as any different than Brandon or any other man.
Mhm.
However, because there's now this movement to erase biology, I'm no longer able to agree with the statement, trans women are women, trans men are men. Like, I feel that's a distinction we need to keep for the sake of reality.
That's
But these people are just trying to
It's
erase our differences. Like, being trans, like, that's a unique experience. You're amongst the only people on earth who know what it's like to live as both sexes. That's an amazing, unique experience. Why are differences a bad thing? But I
right.
think it just goes to show their hypocrisy.
Right. Also, I do think they're trying to dominate the space. You know, you have to remember that trans women are men. They were born men. They were socialized as men. They come to spaces in a different way of being. I was socialized as a female. Half my life I lived as a female. So I have a different way of coming to being a man. And trans women have a different way of coming to be a woman. And they are not women. They are trans women. I say, oh, you don't think I get my balls kicked in constantly for saying that? I do, but I will not back down. We are not men and women. We are trans. And that is a huge, huge part of who we are. And to erase it, you know, if you notice, trans men aren't necessarily doing that as much as trans women, which is really what is upsetting to me, because as living my life as a female and being in that space for a long time, I do see how hard it is to live as a woman. And for trans women to want to erase that space is very disturbing to me. And it's more than the trans thing. There's something bigger going on here. And I find it to be very upsetting. And I hear what you're saying, my friend. And I really appreciate that you brought that to the table.
That was a great, great question. Helen, I think you have a question as well. Please unmute yourself and ask.
Thank you. I am very excited to come to Brandon's space. I have been a big fan of Brandon for many years. And I love when you go to a big rally and say and sing your signature singing like "Walk Away," and I thought that was so cool. So a big shout out to Brandon first, and then I'm also very impressed by what Bug and Mike and Demo. I think that's your name. The three of you, what you said. I want to thank you very much. This year, I'm running as New York State Assembly candidate in Manhattan, and I'm in the Lower Manhattan area. And in my district, I believe we have um, a population of LGBT uh, voters and residents, and I would like to reach out to them as well. So I'm asking for help from you to help me to reach out to them and let them know that I respect what they say, and I very much respect what you guys say, because the schools are doing propaganda, and that propaganda is not really a respect for LGBT, and that propaganda is actually hurting the image of LGBT. And for Leah Thomas to receive a gold medalist, I don't think that's what LGBT people love to see. Actually, I think it's a referendum to what LGBT people actually love to see is the respect, not to steal girls' um, championship medalist. So that's what I think, and I hope you guys help me to reach out to them. And my district has a large, like a humongous, maybe over 60% are swing voters. So I have DM Brandon, and I hope that you will come to Manhattan with me and sing your beautiful songs and have a big rally with me in my district. And I want to personally invite all of you to come. I think it will be wonderful. I actually enjoy the campaigning process. I'm running as a Republican in my district, and hopefully I'm running unopposed. But I have a good background, and I am a strong candidate. I'm not coming as a placemate or a joke for running just for fun. I am seriously hoping that I will help New York to walk away, and I help
Oh,
New York to have truth, because I think Buck, Mike, and Damon, you're all for truth, uh, telling people their medical options, telling people the consequences, and let them make their decisions. So I would love to work with all of you for the future several months, and I hope that with your help I can win in November. Thank you so much, and help me to raise my profile in Twitter as well. And I feel very honored to have this opportunity to speak. Thank you so much. God bless you, all of you.
thank you, Helen, so much. I just want to remind our other panelists tonight is actually Melissa. Damien, as far as I know, is not gay or trans. If
Can
Damien,
I identify as that for one night only? Am I allowed?
you certainly can.
It'll be the
And,
night you spend with me.
I always knew you liked me, Mikey.
and Damien, you just be as fluid as you need to be to feel like your true self. We are here for you.
Awesome.
I just wanted to say too, Helen, you're amazing. I'm sitting here cheering. I've been praying for good people to run as Republicans in New York. I'm in New York. My friend Matt, who's here, is in New York. Brandon used to be, and I miss having movie nights with him. So we got to get him back, even though it sucks now. They've run the city into the ground. So hell yes, I followed you. I want to help however I can.
Helen, do us a favor and shoot a DM to Damien, please. I'm actually going to be coming to New York twice in the next 4 or 5 months, and I think it would be terrific to do another event in New York. God knows we had such a lovely, easy time with the LGBT community the last time we did our event in New York City. They were just so kind and accommodating to us, as they always are. But wouldn't it be great to get Buck and Melissa and like do a live event and come to New York? Like Melissa's already in New York. Yeah, so no excuse. We're totally gonna do this. We're gonna
I'm
do
there.
this.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna do. So in the next couple of months, we're coming to New York, and the LGBT community can just get ready for us because we're coming back.
All
Awesome. And I
right.
think
Are
we
we ready
have
to do another question?
yeah, Stephanie, I think is next, correct? Or is it Matt? Or is it Matt?
Honestly,
Sorry.
I can't remember. Sorry. Stephanie, you go
Okay,
first.
we're going
Sorry,
ladies
Matt.
first.
Hi.
We're going ladies first.
Hello. Hi.
Hi there.
Hey, Buck. Hi, everyone. So we were talking earlier about puberty blockers, right? And how I'm seeing a lot of these really disturbing headlines right now. White House is coming forward saying puberty blockers is the best course of action. We've got, this just what we talked about in the school in New Jersey. And I wanted to speak as a woman, a biological woman who has been on puberty blockers and has had a radical hysterectomy. And I can tell you about some of the devastating effects of them if anyone's interested, and why that is actually how Buck and I became close, because of some of the devastating effects that I was dealing with after having a radical hysterectomy. I have a really severe form of endometriosis, and I've had it since I've been 13 years old. Basically, since I started menstruating, I had a really severe form of this disease. It actually almost killed me because it was so severe. And because of that, I was placed on puberty blockers. Now, they don't call them puberty blockers for me. It's just a drug known to completely stop my estrogen production, as well as stopping other hormones in my body. It basically shuts down your entire sexual reproductive system. Okay. And for me, it was to stop the endometriosis from taking over other organs in my body. Now, when I was placed on those blockers, it was very, very, very clear that I was only allowed to be on them for 6 months. This was as I was placed on them in my 30s, and I had already had children. I was a fully formed adult female, and the effects on me were quite devastating. The what I'm seeing for recommendations for younger children are years of blockers. So if any, when I'm talking about, I'll just try to speak a little more succinctly, but when I'm talking about the devastating effects, I'm talking about aching bones to the point where I thought I had lupus. I was getting tested for that. Severe suicidal ideation to the point where I had to get off of them. And that's when we started pursuing radical hysterectomy, because my condition was too grave to leave the estrogen in my body. But the blockers caused so much damage to me that I became extremely concerned about anyone being placed on them. And that's when I became extremely alarmed. And that was one of the first, I guess, steps from me walking away, was because I was on the extreme left. I've always been born and raised, grew up extreme activist, liberal chick. And when I started kind of learning more about what was happening with this, it was really like the linchpin for me where things started to unravel. And sorry, I'll stop now, but if anyone wants to interject.
Well, thank you, my friend, for showing up and telling
Hey.
you have such a crazy story. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
But the point that I think that you're here and why you're so important to my message and to us in our community is that you have actual real life experience with these medication as an adult and also as a youngster. But they're giving, on some level, they're giving this medication off label. It's not even really made for transgender kids. It's made
Exactly.
for precocious puberty, which is a very small space for youngsters. So the fact that they're just throwing this stuff, look what it did to your body. Now, can we imagine what it's going to do to young people? And then they're lying. They are actually lying to the world, saying that it's reversible, that you can just go off of it and you can pick up your your space wherever you are. And I don't know if any of you know the story of Jazz Jennings, but Jazz is a very famous transgender woman. And she went on the puberty blockers at a very young age, I think 8 or 9 years old. And then she was going to have the vaginal surgery, and they couldn't do that because her penis didn't grow enough because of the puberty blockers. So they had to take her colon, and now she has what they call a colon vagina.
That's exactly true. That's
Right.
exactly true. That's exactly what happened.
That's right. So it's horrible that this young person, who I think when I'm watching her, I see that she doesn't seem so happy anymore, and that we did destroy her body on some level. And kids are kids, and it's just so bizarre to me that we are giving a medication that is so destructive to the human body and acting as if it's just totally fine and these kids will be totally okay when they won't be.
That's it. And can I just make one more point, Buck? It's everything you said is so, so, so important. We've talked about this before, you and I, but I just wanted to give, a little more information as well of what I do and why it relates to like this issue. I also work just inspired by like everything that I had gone through. I work at teaching pelvic floor recovery. So I was a bar instructor and this fitness instructor and everything, and I got taken down so hard by this disease and by all the blockers and the radical hysterectomy that I completely just shifted everything I did, and I started working with women that had radical hysterectomies or had other issues with me. Well, the big thing I started hearing from people who had radical hysterectomies because they had transitioned. And I started hearing from like mothers or doctors or people that I just met. Hey, I have a trans patient, or okay, so my son is trans and they're having all these issues. And again, it's the same kind of issue. It's the same issues that, the women who have, cancer have had a radical hysterectomy, except they're having it at such a young age. And it really scares me that people aren't going to take just a little bit of time, okay, to just wait it out. Not wait it out like you shouldn't do this. I'm not here to get in anyone's head or space, but to take the time to really understand and consider what you are going to be doing to your body when you remove those foundational organs. Because I can tell you the conversations that I'm having, I'm getting emotional even talking about it, I'm having with these people, they're so deep because they have been so misled and they have never been told. They are like telling me, I have this 20-year-old I just was talking to, a radical hysterectomy, right? After transitioning, walks out with not one scrap of information, not one piece of information about supplements, bone loss, about atrophy, about what to expect, about your pelvic floor dropping, about anything. It's so wrong. That's one of the most, if not the most destructive surgeries you can do to your body. And for me, it was life-saving. And for Buck, it was life-saving, right? But it still doesn't mean it cannot deeply affect you. So to me, to see this push, to push people into this space and to push them into that space at a young age, our brain isn't even fully formed till age 25. I'm done. Sorry. That's my
horrifically irresponsible. 100%. Melissa, I actually want to ask you a question really quick too, because Mikey and I talk about this often, and I think, in my opinion, like around 2015, when marriage equality became the law of the land according to the Supreme Court, it was like 17 seconds after that decision was made that the LGBT community started hating gay men. And I think if they could just shove the G right off the acronym, they would do it as quickly as possible. And of course, it started with white gay men, but I actually believe they now hate black gay men just about as much as they hate white gay men. I mean, it's just, they don't want gay men on the acronym anymore. So my question for you, Melissa, is, as a lesbian woman who is very open about your support for President Trump, I don't know if you identify as a Republican, but I know you at least identify as a Trump supporter and did in the past. What is your relationship like with other LGBT people as an open woman who is a Trump supporter / Republican?
I have absolutely no relationship with the community. And it didn't start with Trump, but when I grew up and came out and started going to the gay clubs and trying to find my people, I never seemed to agree with my people. And I still felt left out. And it wasn't, the environment or anything. It was just the way I was thinking of things. Going to the Pride Parade, yeah, it was fun, but it was like, why am I proud of who I sleep with? That's not. I started to question why I was there because it didn't make sense to me. I'm sure you've been to Pride events. It's a shit show, but it's nothing to, gloat about. And once marriage equality became legal, I feel like everything went off the rails. We finally got equality with marriage, with, adoptions, with equal opportunity. And now nobody wants equality. Everyone wants to be special. So this is why we're in the situation we're in. People are now wanting more. They want to be in this subdivision of the LGBTQA, whatever the hell it is now. But when I meet other gay people in, my job and everything else, they automatically assume I'm a liberal, and I shut that down real quick. I will stand up for what I believe in. I don't really consider myself a Republican. I guess I don't want to be labeled anymore. I just want to be and do. That's all I want to be.
The Pride Parade is like, as you were talking about that, it's such a perfect example. It's like another example of what I was saying earlier about, like, why is there all this need to affirm kids when it's being LGBT is already so celebrated within schools anyway? Like, I can actually remember going to the Pride Parade when I was like a really, really young guy at a time when there was still a lot of homophobia and you couldn't walk down the street and hold hands with your partner, and people would shout names and throw things out of cars at you. And like, it actually felt like there was a point in going and, marching down the street and holding hands with people and just being like, we're here, we're people, we're whatever. But now when you go to the Pride Parade and there's 20 million people there and 90% of them are heterosexual, and as you're walking down the street, it's a rainbow flag outside of Citibank, a rainbow flag outside of Starbucks, a
Right.
rainbow flag outside of Home Depot, a rainbow. I mean, you're like, what are we fighting for? Like, what, like everything is gay. What are we doing?
Right. We got more than what we asked for, and now we're still fighting for more things. It seems that like equality is never equal. If we all wanted equality, it wouldn't be gay rights, it wouldn't be straight rights, it would just be American rights. Everyone has to get on that page. Because if not, we're always going to be divided. 100%.
They don't want equal rights. I always say the real equality means being treated just as shitty as everyone else.
Right.
If they would have convulsions if they experienced real equality.
As soon as gay marriage, I hate calling it gay marriage, just call it marriage. As soon as that became legal, I was like, great, I could be as miserable as straight people. Thank you.
I used to like the day of Pride because it felt like the one day that gay people were like nice or something. They were a bit nicer, but now they're as miserable on that day as every other day.
Yeah.
And I think we've got some more questions lined up as well. I think, Matt, thank you for being patient. I don't know if we've got that order right, but Matt, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, Matt.
Hi, everybody. Hey, Mike. I love what's been getting said in this space, and I wanted to piggyback off of I forgot her name, the last speaker, but about the whole puberty blockers and medications and things for children. I think that and me for wearing my conspiracy hat a little bit tonight, but I do think that there is something going on with the pharmaceutical companies here, and I think that, I mean, not just in this not just in this topic, but obviously as we've seen the last 2 years, the pharmaceutical industry, their greed knows no bounds, and all of that. I know that's not what this space is about, but I think as we've seen, the pharmaceutical industry is very, very corrupt and greedy. And I think that part of this whole pushing kids to be trans, to take puberty blockers and everything like that, I think part of it is a long game, because pharmaceutical companies know well and good that once kids get on transitioning medications, they will likely be lifelong pharma customers, whether or not they follow through with their transition for the rest of their life. Because if they do follow through with their transition, they need to be on the hormones for the rest of their life. And if they decide to detransition later on, the trans stuff that they did take may have messed them up in the ways that we've heard earlier in this space, that they now have to be on all sorts of other medications to deal with whatever issues came up during that. So I think that and then I think that sort of trickles down to the schools. I think a lot of the school stuff is just kind of a bunch of useful idiots who are just trying to be good, and we want to support everybody and blah blah blah, and they don't really think through how this could be damaging, and they probably don't feel like they're allowed to think through how this could be damaging for fear of professional repercussions or anything like that. I think that, and then of course what ends up happening is that tends to attract these like TikTok teachers with the blue hair who have meltdowns because the third grader didn't use their pronouns correctly or whatever like that. So that, that festers an environment with those kinds of like mentally unstable adults in the room who really, really want to push this agenda for I guess their own self-actualization. I'm not really sure what that is, but I do think that there's a piece of this that where like the people on top making all the money have really no reason to stop this. In fact, they have every reason to kind of push this and get more pharma custom. I'm reminded of like when I was growing up, it was like everybody had ADD, every single person, so everybody was on Ritalin or any whatever the other ADD drug was. That was like the big thing at the time. And like my actually just on a personal level, they wanted to like label me when I was like 3 years old, and I'm very grateful to my parents that they were like, no way, he's not taking any of those tests because you're just going to try and hate him. And so I kind of grew up in the way of like no pharmaceuticals unless necessary, whatever. That's a tangent, but anyway, I think that there is something going on here. I also think that, again, wearing my conspiracy hat just a little bit, the amount of infertility that the trans hormones and things can cause. And my conspiracy hat a little bit thinks like depopulation agenda, but that's maybe a bigger theory that I won't go into too much right now. But anyway,
I was gonna say that earlier because I think that's their end game. Because once you get kids on all these medications, Buck is right. You can't come back from it. So their reproductive organs are not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is a depopulation sort of thing going on that nobody talks about, that a lot of people aren't aware of, and I think that this is one, not the only one, but maybe one of the pharmaceutical avenues to achieve that goal. So that's sort of what's been festering in my mind on that.
The pharmaceutical aspect is like such an interesting thing that I had never really thought about. But I feel like you gave me so much to think about and consider, like especially when you make the analogy about ADD and stuff, because you're so right. Like, and I feel like they don't even talk about that anymore. But you're right. Like during a whole generation, it was just like, oh my God, a child who doesn't want to sit still. Obviously, they need medication, and now it's like, oh my God, a girl who feels slightly awkward in her body. Clearly, she's trans. There is such a parallel there. That's very, very interesting. Okay, I'll shut up. I know we have more questions.
We've got Eric, I believe, next. Eric? And if Eric, we seem to be having some problems with Eric, so maybe we should go to Arch first and see if Arch, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, this is well, Archbishop Gen X, real name's David. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, okay. I've been waiting here. First of all, I just want to say to you, Brandon, I just have like the most love, the most respect, and my heart goes out to you for everything that went on with you with the whole January 6th nonsense. I mean, I discovered you a lot earlier with the WalkAway campaign. And I said, "Hey, this is cool because, I've come out of the gay community myself to embrace my Christianity more, and even from what the lady was saying tonight, I think she's the lesbian lady, that most of the values of the whole LGBT community, they never fit with me anyway. I would just have to say, we're not going to talk about politics. We're not going to talk about you walking around in the thong and pride, and then we'll be okay. So I always have to mute myself, and I had lots of friends, but no one with the kind of values that you guys are espousing now. So I think that's a great thing. And I do believe that God is using you and a lot of people here to expose the really radical fringes of what's going on the left, especially. And I think it's great that you're attacking this whole transgender issue too, because it's just going completely berserk. And I'm probably, I think, about 10 years younger than Buck. So I remember being a little kid in the 70s and the 80s and all that. And when it was called transsexual, not transgender, like Christine Jorgensen, I think was one of the first people that came to prominence with it for wanting to change gender and all that. So my question really was to Buck, because I've seen him, I've been aware of him for quite a while. I remember discovering his porn back in the day, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's kind of out there for me. And I saw your debate with Charlie Kirk, and really I'd never seen Charlie Kirk be so quiet in my life. He was just sitting there going, what do I say? What do I say? But my question to you is, I get a lot of you where you say what so-called transgenderism isn't, but I can't really decide what you say, what you think it is, and I boil it down to one question. My question for you is gender dysphoria an actual mental illness? And if it is, in your opinion, is there any other way to treat it other than just transitioning? Because back in the day, I had a friend who basically anybody would say should have been born a woman. He looked just like a girl when he was a teen. He was people looked at him and said, that's a girl. They would fake with him. They would, flirt with him all the time. He got beat up in high school by the girl because they jealous because all the hot boys were coming on to him thinking he was actually a girl. He went and told his parents, even though they were conservative Christian, they said, no, we love you. We don't understand it. But if this is what you want to do, well, his parents were very well off. They put him to, psychological counseling and some prayer and all that. But they were going to pay to have him transitioned and everything. But he overcame and I'm going to say it, he overcame it through prayer with Jesus Christ and professional counseling. And now he's about almost a 60-year-old man, and he's been happy as a man. So to Buck, do you believe there's any other way to deal with somebody if they are actually diagnosed with gender dysphoria? And I believe my friend Jay, he actually was, but he overcame it and he never so-called transitioned. What would you think about that?
Right on, my friend. Thank you for the question. And first off, you kind of just answered your question because that person did overcome it. So that being said, people need to understand that the trans community is not monolithic. We all have different reasons why we transition. The reason why I transition be different than the next person. That also being said, remember, I transitioned at a later age, and I went through a lot when I was a kid. I totally act like a kid. I was a boy. I was totally brought up on some level as a boy, which we used to call tomboys. I was extremely masculine. I always wanted to be a boy. I always was like, and when I was 10 years old and I started growing my breasts, I would do this thing like smashing them down so I couldn't stand it. And eventually I got into a therapist who diagnosed me with gender dysphoria. And she did not just write a letter immediately, which I had spoken about earlier. She made me go through 2 years of extensive therapy, which means she pushed against me. She said, well, what do you mean you're a man? What does that even mean to you? Like, she questioned it, and we really thought about it. And during that time, I had to dress and act like a man and walk the world that way. That being said, this was the choice I made because I did try living as a woman for a very long time and it just didn't work for me. Didn't feel fine. I was suicidal. I was alcoholic. I was layers upon layers of not wanting to be in this world. And it wasn't until I started to take the medication and have the surgery did I finally feel like I could take my hat off and walk the world with nothing covering me, and I could look people in the eyes, and I could be accomplished, and I could create businesses, and I could everything I have today, I will say, is because of my transition. But I want to let everybody know here that just because it worked for me does not mean it's going to work for the next person. And why I believe that we need to have a structure in place that says, well, maybe you're not, or maybe you are. And how do we find out if you're making the right choice instead of just pushing people through it? So I think, again, it is a very, very personal choice. And why it upsets me today to see transgender being pushed on as an identity choice. Here's the difference between me and them. I'm a transsexual, which means that I had on some level a sex change. Now, you can't change your sex. That's not possible. My biology is still the same, but it's what we used to call it. And transsexual means, and it's still in play, it's somebody who feels like the opposite gender they were born into. And so I was born female and I felt like a male, and I wanted to look and act and walk the world as a man. I do not want to be a trans person. That is not part of my space. I want to be a man. Trans today is an identity choice. People choose to be trans. Do you see the difference? It is hugely different. It has become this space where people just want to be trans instead of saying, I have an illness, and I do. I have an actual mental illness called gender dysphoria. And I will always tell you that I have a disorder. And the trans community pushes against that because they don't want it to be a disorder, and they want it to be a space that anyone can just join in and become. And so that's what I sort of fight against. I fight against this space that says, no, I have a disorder, and it's not funny, and it's not cute, and it's not happy, happy, happy. It's a space that I took care of myself, and now I move forward in the world. I hope I answered the question.
I just want to point out, too, that the ideas being promulgated by the mainstream LGBT community go directly against all of the things that have helped the general population understand gay people and trans people for so many years. If you think about it, they are literally saying that being gay is a choice, that being transgender is a choice, that a gay man can just will himself into being attracted to female bodies. If you would think that it came from the Westboro Baptist Church, I swear.
Mikey, that's funny. Oh boy. There, I see more hands raised.
Yeah, so
Yep, we've definitely got more questions. Eric, are you back yet?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm at work tonight, so I wanted to really just come in and say thank you to Brandon for all he's doing, kind of mocking the last speaker there. Brandon, thanks a lot for everything you're doing, and I really enjoyed that you came onto the space tonight. It's awesome. Thanks a lot for everything, guys, and I enjoy the context.
Thank you. And I guess I didn't acknowledge that the last person was very nice as well. So thank you to the last speaker as well. And just so you guys know, as I mentioned earlier, tonight is the last in our series of deep space events because I'm off house arrest in 2 weeks, and we're kind of putting a lot of focus on planning live events. But I just wanted to let you know that in keeping with WalkAway Wednesdays that we've been doing for like the last 6 weeks, I think that next week I'm going to jump on a space with all of you guys and just do an Ask Me Anything. And I mean that sincerely. I know a lot of you, and thank you to all of you who have followed some of my interviews. It's been very difficult for me to get my story out about January 6th because even the conservative media doesn't really want to touch it that much, and the Republican politicians don't want to touch it. So I want to thank all of you who've gone out of your way to actually find it and listen and care about what happened to me and what's happened to so many other people. And so I mean it sincerely when I say, if you come next week, I will answer any question you ask me, unless I absolutely can't. But please come back because I want to answer your questions next week.
Awesome. So next, or in the order, we have JM77. If you could unmute yourself.
Hey, girl.
Hey, I have a question for you guys. I'm getting increasingly frustrated with the way, especially right-leaning media, is not separating the fact that this is literally mostly the radical T faction, the PQ faction of the community, And the only person with a large platform that I've seen even separate at all is Candace Owens. But I feel like we're just all being lumped into this shit show. And I don't know what we can do because it's making me grow increasingly frustrated. How can we separate ourselves and make them see that this is a small faction of this community? It's not all of us because I'm going crazy with this. It's pissing me off.
Well, I think we're doing that right now. And I think that we have to do more events like this. And I think it's going to help tremendously once I'm off house arrest and we're able to get on, go out and start doing live events, and we're going to be live streaming them in front. I mean, this is great. Don't get me wrong. I've really loved using this medium of Twitter Spaces, and we're going to continue to do it for a number of different things for a long time. But there's nothing, in my opinion, more powerful than a live audience and a live group and people standing up and applauding each other and debating each other. And I wish there was more of that. I wish that people on the left wouldn't just call us names on social media all the time and then never show up to the events to ask us any questions or debate us or say anything to our faces. And we always go out of our way to be super nice and accommodating and asking them to come, and they don't. But we did actually do, I think, one of the most powerful events we've ever done was in October of 2020. We did the WalkAway left, or LGBT left versus LGBT right debate. And that I think we all kind of recognized immediately that we had something there, and that this is going to be sort of like a format that we use more and more going forward, is to try to do live debates in front of a live audience and live stream it to try to reach as many people as possible. But it's really disheartening, and I know what you mean. And that's kind of, I mean, I was joking earlier, but Mikey and I literally sometimes we call each other and we're just upset for like an hour because it feels insurmountable sometimes. And when you look at one of the things I bitch about all the time, and I hope this doesn't sound egotistical because I swear to God I don't mean it to, but like I look at magazines like Out Magazine and Advocate Magazine and all of these LGBT magazines that claim to be about empowerment, as Mikey says, of the community, and all they ever do is like prop up left-wing LGBT people, and then they go out of their way to destroy and tear down anybody who doesn't believe in their leftist agenda. And when they do these lists of like, the 50 LGBT people who shattered the glass ceiling in 2020, and it's always like literally like a flight attendant and an ice skater, and all these people. And I'm like, seriously, is it really hard to be a gay ice skater in 2020? But God forbid, if you're somebody who is like leaves the left, you do something on the right, you do something successful in the Republican Party or anything like that, they go out of their way to try to tear you down and destroy your life. And it does at times feel like it's something, it feels overwhelming to try to fight back. But then those are the moments that I think you have to really remember what it used to be like for LGBT people, period. I mean, think of the times of Harvey Milk and these people who, I mean, literally the entire world hated the entire gay community. And look where the gay community is now. They have more power than anybody else. They have so much power that this tiny little faction of people is pulling all of the strings and have so much political clout and power. So at least we've looked at the model and we've seen that it can happen. We've seen that we can flip this and we can change this, but it is going to require a lot of work and a lot of perseverance, and it's going to require a lot of failure and loss and having to go through extremely difficult times. I'm going through that now. I've gone through it the last year, but I think we just have to persevere. We have to stay strong. We have to stick together. We have to support each other and continue to just speak out and have visibility. I mean, that's how the LGBT community got to the point where they are today. And then we also, I think, just have to make a pact to not become as evil as they are once we are the ones who attain power.
Woo!
Thank you,
Well
Mikey.
said. That was well said. All right, MS66, you are up to ask your question.
Hi guys, how you doing? Thank you for letting me come into the space and speak. And Brandon, I really admire you. I've been following you for a long time. I don't even know how long it's been, but we followed each other, I think, when you came into Monica's space, when you first came into spaces. And I'd just like to say this, I am a lesbian conservative. I've always been a lesbian conservative. I didn't have to walk away, but I'm also one of those lesbians that Buck talks about, that when I was a kid, I was definitely a tomboy, and thank God my parents didn't have this option, which I believe they wouldn't do it anyways. But as to Buck's comment, I just like to say, Buck, I totally get where you're coming from, and you're right. Back in our age, I'm 55, so back when I was, my 20s, 30s, whatever, it was about transsexual, right? And I think today it's about kids being trans trenders, right? It's really about them just thinking that they want to be this way, and they really don't understand what it is to be the other sex, or they want to be cool, or so forth and so on. But so with that being said, I listened to Mel earlier, and I think I popped in right when she was speaking. But I just want to let you guys know that Brandon, I appreciate you. I love the work that you're doing. Like I said, I've been following you for a very long time. And again, I'm the same way. I do not agree with the alphabet soup, and I'm almost embarrassed of our LGBT alphabet soup community. And it's like, yeah, you could go to a pride or whatever, but it's not about your jock strap and this and that hanging out, and you got how many millions of thousands of people there for what, right? And so again, I just basically just wanted to say that I appreciate what you're doing, Brandon, and and everybody that's in the space. I think we're onto something. Like Brandon said, we have to not be assholes when we take back the power, because eventually I think we will turn this around. It's just going to take some time, but I'm just kind of fed up with the community. I feel like I've really, I have lost a lot of friends, but I don't fit in there, So again, I just appreciate it, and thank you for letting me speak. And Brandon, I love you, bud.
I love you too. Thank you so much.
All right. We are on our last, to be fair, the rest of the people that are requesting to speak are a little sus. I mean that with the utmost respect, but they are a little sus. So I'm not sure if you want me to call on them or not.
Bring them in. Bring
Yeah,
them
bring them
in.
in.
Bring them
Yeah,
in.
we here. Bring them in.
Okay. All
Let's end
right,
this
here
on
we
a bang.
go. Don't
We encourage
disappoint.
sus around here.
I know you like the sussy ones.
Count the seconds until they start with January 6th.
That's what I thought that guy was going to do. The first one who gave, I've been waiting for 6 weeks for someone to scream insurrectionist when they unmuted themselves. And it hasn't happened yet.
Well, Dakota, now is your chance. You are welcome to ask a question or yell or whatever is on your mind.
Oh, hello?
Okay, Dakota, I took a chance. Oh, there you go.
Oh, sorry
Okay,
about
yep,
that.
you're up.
My first time in one of these chats. So I'm not really sure who I should direct this question to. Maybe Buck, that'd be cool. But do you guys think that there's any correlation between the Maoism teaching of you have the red class and the black class, and if you repent, you can, kind of be part of the revolutionary side, and then kind of like the same thing going on with what's in the schools, where you have, the straight man is really bad and mean to us, and if you come to this side, you can, be a hero again, and things like that.
I've never thought of that actually, but that is a good point. Something is going on. I can't really tell you what it is, but I mean, I like your point on some level. I'm also kind of a conspiracy person, which the other person was talking about. There's just a lot of insanity going on. I don't, I mean, I feel like, am I really seeing this? Is this really real? But, the fact, going to your question of school, I do find it quite disturbing that we are targeting young people, and we are targeting young people in such a way that it's shocking to me that we have not a lot of people really pushing back on this. And so, it's very easy to indoctrinate children. Children are very, as Mel said, also very vulnerable, very easily susceptible to things, very easily swayed in directions. And so, of course, they always go after the children first, because children are so easy to indoctrinate into thought processes. So, your point could be most definitely taken as real, but at this point, who the knows what the hell's going on? But something sure the hell is.
I definitely agree that I think that there's so like when we talk a lot, the right uses this term Marxist a lot lately, the last few years. And I think when the American sort of Marxism, what we're seeing right now from the left, is almost this sort of turning the minority classes into the proletariat, which is sort of the system of how this works. So I think if they can sort of segment off the LGBT, or if they can segment off Black people or brown people and create so much discontent and so much chaos and confusion to divide the classes. I mean, that is the classes. The classes are the minority classes. And actually, I'll be really quick, I promise. But I'm upset that we didn't get to this point tonight, and we can certainly do it at a future event, because I have asked this question from the moment I walked away, and I'm still to get an answer of what the definition of queer is. That's another thing that really started like around the time that the LGBT community started going completely and totally insane. But the closest I ever got to a real true from the person didn't even mean to be so true. They didn't even mean to be so honest. But I was asking this person who identified as queer what queer means. And he was like, well, it's not really like your sexual identity, but it's like it's how you identify. And he started going on with just this stew of nonsense. But by the end, he said, and again, he was being so honest without meaning to be. He said, it's basically anyone who isn't a straight white person. And I was like, boom, there we are. Because that's the whole point, I think, of this, the ever growing acronym and the word queer that nobody can define, is because they're trying to create a war between straight white people and basically everybody else. And they're trying to create this intersectional allyship of victimhood, the victim Black class, the victim brown class, and the victim everybody else class. And that's why they're just shoving all these victim-y people into our community who aren't even actually LGBT. And so, yeah, sorry, I went a little off course because I know you weren't asking about Marxism, but I think the point is kind of the same. Yeah, I think there's absolutely a connection between trying to indoctrinate more people over to this side to create more division. And that is sort of their new class system. The proletariat is all the minorities.
And they're basically, because this even includes straight white men, people who actually are straight white men. It sort of gives them a way to opt out of being the dreaded straight white man. I mean, these liberals I used to know who were straight and white, they would start identifying as the weirdest shit. I'm a demisexual. It's insane. And when you look at the actual dictionary definition of queer, mentally unbalanced or deranged, shady, suspicious, worthless, I think that's very deliberate, because it goes to what they are, the essence of what they are trying to do. They are trying to beat people down, strip away all humanity until nothing remains but identity and leftism.
Mikey, your point about straight men is so on target too, because straight men used to be the only thing I had in my life to be excited about. And the left has even ruined that at this point. Libby, Damien?
Awesome. Libby, who do we have,
Oh.
I think, next?
Yeah, Gabrielle is next. Gabrielle, you're up.
Thank you. I think the left has ruined straight white men for everybody. I'll just say that. But because there used to be like an overabundance of alpha males, and now men are just walking around like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. So, but anyway, and I'm going to speak to what you just said, Brandon. My name is Gabrielle Clark, and I filed the first federal lawsuit against indoctrination in America. And I filed on behalf of my son because of what was going on in his classroom. And the gist of it was that he was supposed to list his identities and and attach signifiers to those identities. And because he's a straight white Christian male, he's just privileged and a filthy racist and oppressor and unconscious bias and all that nonsense, right? So I said, no, we're not doing that, and you know a little bit of back and forth, and they wouldn't allow us to opt out of that class, and so we sued them, but I have to say that while I was fighting for my son in against one school, I moved my daughter out of that school to another school, and unbeknownst to me, she was being socially transitioned to a boy. And I had to back off of my public appearances and all of that stuff so that I could attend to my daughter, who was starting to really spiral out of control. Now, what happened to my daughter what happened to my son didn't start with my son. It started with my daughter being being overly sexualized at school, and which that is what initially caused me to start paying a lot more attention to what was going on in her classrooms. Because of the pandemic, she was being homeschooled. She was, they were doing distance learning, and catching some of these things that had happened, and seeing some of her behaviors made me concerned about what was going on at school. And what happened with my son, one of the things that he did not want to answer on that questionnaire was his gender identity. Excuse me, he did not want to discuss his gender identity. And so that was a concern. He said, I do not feel like I should be discussing my gender identity with a complete and total stranger. And she was. She was a teacher who he had never even met before. And this woman is telling him about all of her sexual preference and whatnot. Why kids need to know what a teacher's sexual preference is, I'll never know. All of my teachers they were like Ken dolls down there. So I don't understand why that was a question. But the thing that is upsetting me the most about this situation is that you only need to get one survey from your kid's school that says what gender, or what your pronoun, what are your pronouns, or what's your sexual orientation, any of that. You need to get one survey, and that's the basis for a free speech lawsuit. That's the basis for a compelled speech lawsuit. Now we are suing, and our main piece of evidence was one assignment. One. So how in the hell hasn't every single parent in America filed a lawsuit and ripped these insurance companies completely bare and stripped them bare? You don't have to go and do what I'm doing and trying to take it all the way to the limit. You can go there and they will beg you to take 100 grand after the first month. Please take this 100 grand, use it to buy your new house, sign this NDA, and get out of our hair. Now, what if every parent in America who got that very first survey, that one survey, what if they all did it? This would be over. This would be over tomorrow. So how come nobody's doing it?
Well, I think you just raised a lot of awareness. I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing until you just said that. Did anybody else?
No, I had no idea, but oh my God, I think I love you. So that said, I don't know how we get a hold of you, or how you can DM any of us, or if you can please come together with us and show us at least the basics of it, because I will push that out to the universe so fast that if people know that this is an actual option, because they don't know that, my friend, I'm pretty sure I didn't even know it. And Brandon, none of us even knew that. So you are a badass. First off, thank you so much for all you're doing. It means the world to me. Secondly, I want to know more of this, and I think probably everybody in this room would, because you are 100% correct. If people knew about this, I can tell you right now, I know 100 people who would do it. So if you could share that information after this program, like, you know, email any of us or send us, we would be so hugely grateful to you, my friend. I mean, you are like a gift from the universe. I just have to say that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting me speak. Anybody can DM me, and I will tell them exactly what I did, exactly how to do it. If you need a lawyer, I'll help you find one. I found it best that if you get a fix-it ticket lawyer, or if you get an ambulance chaser, you'll have a lot more success than if you try to go and get some big wigs guys. You know what I mean? But hey, look, this is not, I have a ninth grade education, okay? And I pulled all of this stuff together, sent it to Carlin. She blasted it out for me, blew the story up, and we've been, you know, running through this nonsense ever since. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid of schools. And he needs to stop being so reactionary. You need to go on the offense. These are your kids. They are trying to steal them. And it doesn't matter whether or not they think they're trans. That's something you need to do in your home. These people are hurting your children, and you just need to say no. Hell no. And be done with that.
I wish every conservative had your spirit, and not just on this issue, but like every issue that there possibly is. I am so tired of all the fear. I'm so sick of the fear. I'm so sick of the, you know, and even, oh God, okay, don't even get me started. I'm not even going to start. I'm not even going to start. Yes, I am. I'm going to do it for a second. Just for a second, I'm going to do it. I am so sick of all of the blue checks and the influencers and all of these people. Oh, they're fighting back against cancel culture. And oh, we're the Republicans who aren't going to take any shit. Are you kidding me? These are all the first people who went running from me as fast as they possibly could when the left told everyone to cancel me this year. It's nothing but fear. And we need more people like you who are not going to take shit and who are going to take charge and lead and bring that kind of fearless energy. I want thousands and thousands and thousands of you.
I have to say, too, it reminds me of, it's a bit of a separate issue, but it reminds me of what we've lived through the last 2 years with the masks and all of that. And I couldn't help wondering over and over, where are all our people? Where there are tens of millions of us. Where are they? Refusing to do it. If every conservative, every Republican refused to comply, refused to go to work, this would be over by now. And it's the same exact thing with this. So I think anyone who's like-minded and sees how evil these things are needs to make a big deal out of every single thing, because these are the most fundamental issues possible that we're dealing with. Your kids' sense of selves, whether you can breathe fresh air. Who would have thought a few years ago? So we keep giving and giving and giving because nobody wants to rock the boat. Everyone wants to get along. And no, you have to start standing up like you are. Thank you.
So true. So true.
Awesome. Next up, we have Samo. Samo, if you would like to unmute yourself and speak.
1 second. Have to turn off my white noise machine.
No problem.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll just say really quickly, it is starting to get a little bit late, so I think we have a couple more questions on deck. Why don't we make those the final questions of the night, and we'll just kind of wrap up on that, and yeah, then we'll say a few things and we'll be out of here.
So I sort of have some resignments, I guess. That's not the correct word, but I have some
reservations.
Thank you. Thank you. I have some reservations about just the general rhetoric that's coming from a lot of people on the right these days when it comes to trans people, just because I see so much of the same recycled rhetoric that was used against every gay person back in the day. And it just feels very recycled, and it gives me a bad feeling inside. It feels just kind of weird, and I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way. Like there are so many old articles about how gay people are sick, they're diseased, they have mental illness, they shouldn't be in the bathrooms, you never know when there's one around, just stuff like that, and it just feels very samey to me.
This is really good. I'm so glad you're asking this, and I think this is great that we can talk about this. And stay here with us for a little while. I'm glad you presented those examples. Does anyone, Melissa or Buck or Mike, do you want to? I have things to say, but I'd rather you go first if you.
Well, I just think it's because things have gotten so radical and so insane so quickly. Unfortunately, and I've been saying this for years, that this is what I was afraid would happen, is that trans people or now gay people would be the baby getting thrown out with the bathwater, and that tens of millions of people who don't want their toddlers being told they might not be the gender that they are just going to say, screw all you people, and wash your hands of it. So I think it's people like us who are advocating against that.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with you on that 100%. And yeah, yes to the speaker, for sure. But there's hard right, hard left, and that those people are going to use a lot of the things to come after us. And some of the stuff we are doing in our own community is creating that space for them to take some of the stuff we do and use it against us, which has always been that way. I mean, they did the same back in the day. So I think, like Mike said, or why I come to these spaces is so that I can bring a sort of nuanced space, I'm hoping, and a conversation, so that people don't think all trans people are these crazy, weirdo, freaky people, and that they can see that quote unquote normal person who walks the world and wants to participate. That's what I bring to this conversation, is that I want to participate in the world. I want to coexist in the world. I do not want to take your space in the world. And I think sometimes people think that trans people want to override everyone's space and take that. And that is not the message that I'm trying to convey out there to the haters. I'm trying to calm that space down and say, no, that's not what trans people want. We want to just be part of the world and move forward with you.
And oh, sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
Sorry. I think a lot of this also goes back to the fact that the media and social media will make you see things that they think you need to see to be on their side. So if you're seeing these articles about, the radical right, or we're seeing articles about the radical left, they know what they're showing us. So you just have to find a space like this where you can see that, people from the right. I went into WalkAway with no idea that Republicans hated gays. My mother actually told me. And when I posted my video, I had 6,000 nice comments. And I was like, huh, that's weird. None of what you said would happen happened. So maybe you were lied to. So you just have to basically find your group. Don't judge a group of people based on a few articles. We should all learn that by now. And yeah, just keep doing research. And there are bad people in every group.
Yes. And I was going to say that I will actually acknowledge that there is onus on our side as well, because I don't think that, generally speaking, conservatives do a good job of demonstrating or being outspoken about the support that they actually have for many minority communities. I mean, it's maddening to me that, as I'm a Republican, that's how I identify, but that doesn't mean the other members of the panel do. So, speaking only for myself, I'll say that it drives me crazy that every day of my life I get accused of being a part of a group that is racist, bigoted, Nazi-like, homophobic, and that all of these people that I've met, and I can honestly say I've met tens of thousands of Republicans over the last 3 or 4 years, because I've traveled so much and I've done so much. I've been the keynote speaker at literally dozens and dozens of Republican clubs, oftentimes speaking to anywhere from 500 to thousands of people. And afterwards, everyone comes up to me and gives me a hug and wants to take a picture with me. And I'm not like one of those people like, I used to be gay and then I prayed and now I'm not. And I mean, if that's who you are, that's fine. I'm just saying that I am very openly gay. I am very unapologetically gay. Like, I make no bones about it. And I can honestly say that of tens of thousands of Republicans, I've maybe met 5 who, first of all, I don't think anyone said anything actually awful to me, but I've probably had a handful of people who are like, I just love you, but I don't love your lifestyle. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, well, I guess that's fine. But I mean, mostly I get people that come up to me and they have tears in their eyes and they say, thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because my son is gay, or my grandson is gay, or my best friend is gay. And it hurts me so much that they think that I'm a bigot because I'm a Republican. And so I think that I don't know who you are. I don't know your life. I don't want to presume to know everything about you, but it does kind of sound to me like maybe you don't know Republicans very well. And to Melissa's point, maybe you're just kind of believing a media narrative, or God forbid, if you're getting this from Twitter, get the hell off of Twitter. It's not real life. It's the seventh ring of hell. It's the worst people who exist on God's earth saying the worst things they can possibly think of. So, I mean, go out and meet real Republicans and have a conversation with them and be open and say, look, I'm a gay person, or however you identify. I worry about the rhetoric I hear from Republicans, and let them answer you. Because I think that you're going to find that these people are not what you think that they are. And like the very rare examples, to Melissa's point, are being propped up in the media and presented as the norm. And it's not the norm.
Oh yeah, definitely. I absolutely agree with I think the point Buck made a while ago, that just a lot of leftists have just spewed vitriolic hate at each other and at other people across the aisle, and it gets a bit intense, quite a bit intense sometimes. But yeah, no, I grew up in a Republican family, was Republican for most of my life. I started going a bit more left nowadays, but I think just like the last thought I have is also just that I do see a little bit more on the conservative side than on the more liberal side, is that just kind of this general proclivity towards hatred, not hatred, but just a proclivity against sheltering away, which I understand, but I don't know. It just kind of that was the main thing that drew me away from all the right circles, is just this kind of general, sorry.
No, I really do actually want to understand that better, because honestly, this is very, I feel like, rare. Yeah, perhaps I'm a little biased because I run WalkAway, but like, I don't feel like I hear people that often who were on the right, especially, I mean, I get the impression you probably are a member of the LGBT community. So if you were a member of the LGBT community and you were choosing to be on the right, like, you've already made a decision that seems like kind of based in a true knowledge of what it means to be on the right. So what in the hell is pulling you over to the left right now?
So I'm bi and trans. It really, it's started kind of from a young age. It always felt, whenever I was in really heavily conservative circles, and I was very heavily in conservative circles, and for a long time I fully was on the conservative side. But as I started to meet more people, and just like people outside of my circles, like I spent a lot of time in different countries and stuff like that. It almost seemed like the conservative mindset was just a little bit too closed off and not willing enough to put themselves out there and actually experiment with what it means to be from a different culture, what it means to have different life experiences, what it means to just be in the presence of people who aren't like you. And I think that was really just the main thing that made me really hesitant to continue practicing, or not practicing, but continue living in those really conservative circles.
Well, that disappoints me to hear that that's your experience, because in my opinion, that's what was so great about Trump. Was I felt like Trump changed on its face what it sort of meant to be a Republican and what type of person was attracted to Republicanism. And I felt like for the first time in my life that being a Republican didn't have to do with like morality or bedroom issues or things like that. We got back to the basics of like economy and borders and America first and things like that. And suddenly the Republican Party started to feel so big tent to me. And I really felt like I fit in. And I've always, and sometimes things come and go in waves. Mikey and I have talked about this too. Like, it's weird. Sometimes just randomly, like there will be a month where all these people are saying really homophobic stuff on Twitter, and a lot. Sometimes it's even like some of the blue checks, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? And then it kind of passes, and suddenly everyone sort of becomes normal again, and I don't know what the hell they're going through, but I don't feel like that's the norm. I mean, I don't know. That's in my experience, the Republican Party is becoming more big tent and more open-minded. It's only the idiots who are the leadership of the Republican Party who haven't gotten the message yet.
That's really quite fascinating because I maybe it's just the circles we run in because I live in a really rural area, so maybe that's just more of a rural lifestyle type thing. But yeah, no, I think if just everybody had a lot more empathy towards others not in their exact situation, it would all be a lot better.
You are a trans bisexual person who lives in a rural, like you're the most interesting. I need to know more about you at some point.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome, and thanks for speaking up tonight. That's a great. It was great topics.
Awesome. And next up, we have Quaidum, and then we will be finishing off with Anastasia. So, Quaidum, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm kind of nervous to talk to people. So, the real question is this. Do you think that I've seen a lot of news these days every week about the rainbow plus, I'm not going to say the LG thing is kind of code words. I'll just call it rainbow anyway. The rainbow plus on the liberal side, do you think that they're going to invade this country turn into this rainbow dystopia? They're not going to call it United States of America. They're going to call it United States of Rainbow Dystopia. So is it like the invasion of this rainbow plus gender bending and all this crap going on, or is it not true?
It's invasion of the body snatchers. That's what the whole trans thing is about. No, what I would say is I think you have to look at what is behind all of these things, whether it's black, trans, gay, rainbow. That's never what it's really about. And one little allegory that I kind of always go back to in my mind is I remember when in New York I went to the Pride Parade the year that Cynthia Nixon was running against Andrew Cuomo for governor.
Oh,
And
barf,
she's a
barf.
but I have a point. She's a lesbian. She's, probably her politics are more in line with them. And being there that day, they had all their banners, all their signs everywhere. GLAD for Cuomo, HRC for Cuomo, every LGBT group for Cuomo. And that is exactly what the whole thing is about. It is just a front for the Democratic Party. And these identity labels are just how they manipulate you. These people are con artists, and identity is their snake oil. So yes, I think it's an invasion, but I think it's an invasion of the Democratic Party and radical leftism. And they're just using all of these minority groups to achieve that goal. And the reason for that is that most people are not so bad. Most people are kind-hearted and want people to be protected and have their rights and be nice to the gays and all that, but they're turning into useful idiots for communism.
Totally. And sorry, I'm just going to jump in because this actually reminds me of something I wanted to say after Todd said what he was saying earlier about being like an older gay man and stuff like that. I cringe so hard when I see gay men in their 50s, their 60s, whatever, and I go and they have like their pronouns in their bio and stuff, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, these are men who like literally lived in a time where they couldn't say they were gay at work. They would get kicked out of their homes. Like they had to face violence and all this stuff, and now it's like you're just sitting back and allowing this gender thing to kind of take over, and you're just going along for the ride. And it's just like your point, Mikey. It's like I think they look back and they think of like all of the things that they went through, and they're just trying to be kind, but they're not really thinking. No one's really looking at like the man behind the curtain and what this actually truly is. And that's the whole, for God's sake, no one even read the Florida bill. It takes 4 minutes to read that damn bill, and nobody in our community read it. Somebody just told everyone to get mad. And so they instantly went out and got mad. And now they've raised millions and millions and millions of dollars for the Democratic Party. because nobody read this bill and everybody got their hearts broken because they were told to be upset about something. And I think it's insane, but it makes me crazy that there are people in our community who are really from a generation that experienced brutal homophobia. And when I see it, and they've got these stupid pronouns now in their bios, they're just like going along with what everybody tells them to do. When I see that, it makes me feel like, would a black man ever, like, it would be like if black people were suddenly like cheering on Rachel Dolezal and like putting their race in their bio to support Rachel Dolezal. Like, it's like, what are you guys doing? What do you? Okay. Ugh.
They're kind of starting to put their race in. Have you guys seen the new thing where people like start describing themselves?
What do you mean?
Have you seen that? Like, they'll be like, my name is Mike, my pronouns are he, him, I am a white male with dark hair, and I look like a cartoon character. And I'm
Yes.
wearing a white shirt with black sleeves. You haven't seen that?
No, I don't even know what it means.
It's I think it's under the guise of being for the visually impaired. That's their new thing.
Well, Melissa or Buck, do you have any final thoughts on this question before we begin wrapping up?
Well, we have one more question asked.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem. Anastasia, you want to go ahead and take yourself off of mute and ask your question?
Yeah, thanks. God, this is a massive topic. While I've been listening to everybody, there's so many things I wanted to comment on. Why are they doing this? Why, you look at Psaki talking about that they're going to start funding or making it easy for doctors to transgender, 3-year-olds. I mean, it's like they don't even know who they are yet. They could be making a huge mistake. They don't know what's behind it. So that's one question. I also want to say I'm going to identify myself. I'm a straight Jewish female. Brandon, I've met you a couple of times. That I'm not going to talk about where or how, but I loved hearing you speak. I loved everything you were doing. So courageous. Talking about the fear, I think there's fear when something like January 6th happens and we see what they've done to some of these people in prison, what they're going through, and people are scared to death of, now protesting even. So that's about that part. But I'm also a psychologist, and I wanted to talk about the word queer. In my opinion, it could be anybody who's an outsider. I mean, I talk to people all the time who felt like an outsider, and it could be for any reason at all. So that could be queer. If you're the only Jewish person in an all Christian school, you're queer. You know what I'm saying? There's all different ways of looking at things. And I have total support for anyone who's born male, feels like a female, wants to transgender, and they're an adult. Perfectly, totally supportive of that. But when you start, you know, taking children and confusing them and what that woman before was talking about, what they did to her children, injecting them with the vaccine without parental consent. Now there's this, when I saw that McCullough, who was running for governor of Virginia, saying that parents don't have any say, well, that guy lost that election big time. So I also want to say, when you talk about nobody's doing anything, there are a lot of people doing things. There's a lot of conservative groups, parental groups. They're getting involved. They're kicking these people off the school boards. They're, going to be at the election, getting involved in the polls. You know, there's people are fired up right now, parents. But then, of course, the DOJ says we're going to go after parents. They're the domestic terrorists, right? So they want to scare people from, speaking out and doing this stuff. And that's what they do. That's how they do it. They frighten people. They smear you. They do anything possible to stop you from doing it. And so when the government is coming out and saying, if you're a parent and you go to the school board and you start talking to the school board about how you don't want your kid. I think it started with this Loudon thing where some kid was raped in a bathroom, and they actually arrested the father for speaking out about it. That's what turned the whole election around. So the fact that they're out there doing this and it's out there now and people are seeing it and we're talking about it, a lot of people are rising up now to fight against it, which I think is a really good thing. Um, and I have a lot to say, but I know you guys want to, you know, start. This is the last. I'm the last person here. I have a lot to say, um, and psychology is very interesting when it comes. I totally believe people are born the way they're born. If they don't feel comfortable with the way they're born, and it's affecting their lives, they should do something about it. But when this whole thing, what they're doing to these kids, the masking of kids, when everyone else is masked off, and these 2, 3, 4 year olds are still masked, what is really going on here? What are they doing? Are they trying to stop people from being able to speak to each other, talk to each other? Are they trying to, make it so people don't have babies anymore? Maybe they think, if they transgender people, they're not going to have children anymore, and that's the whole depopulation thing. I don't know what's really behind this. There's a lot of theories, but it's all really horrible. And we've got to get Biden out of the White House because he's putting in all these laws for all this craziness to continue.
There's
So,
definitely a lot of theories. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can really do but wait to see what it was. But I, as much as a conspiracy theorist that I am, the only difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is about 6 to 12 months. So parents need to really step up. They have to stand their ground, get all this, indoctrination out of these kids' heads, pull them out of the schools, go to PTA meetings, do whatever they have to do, because if they get the kids, that's where it stops. Just like I said with the whole COVID thing. Once they take your medical freedom, nobody's going to have any rights. That's it. There won't be gay rights, black rights, straight rights. There will be nothing. And this is where we are now. So everybody needs to stand up and do what they have to do to try to slow them down, because the government doesn't run anything. Big Pharma runs everything. Remember, follow the money always.
Always follow the money, my friend. Thank you for saying that. It is 100% really about money, because I have followed the money, and I did see on a actual website called Market Watch where they actually told you to invest in transgender surgeries. They actually tell you this because transgender surgery will be a $5 billion business in the next 5 to 10 years. It's right there. I can show it to any of you. So follow the money. There is a lot of money involved in hormone blockers, testosterone, surgeries. Now we have millions of surgeons who are trans surgeons. What makes you a trans surgeon? How do you become a trans surgeon? You just put trans surgeon next to your name. So yeah, anyway, I appreciate all of you tonight. It's been a great talk, and it's really got me amped up to feel that people actually do care, and they really are out there, and I think things are going to start changing. So I just really appreciate all of you bringing me to this space and really having such a beautiful adult conversation. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you, Buck. Don't jump off just yet. We formally say goodbye around here. We don't just leave. Mikey, Mikey, do you have any closing thoughts tonight?
This was amazing. I just think it's so important for us to keep representing this perspective. You mentioned before how it'll sometimes come in waves, that people will seem more anti-LGBT on the right, and I've been noticing an uptick in that lately, and I get exactly where it's coming from. I kind of can't blame them. So yeah, that's why I think people like us are, not to toot our own horns, but I will. I think that's why this is necessary. So I'm so glad this is amazing. Trampa, you are an icon and a trailblazer. Mel, you're amazing. We need to hang out because we're both stuck in this hellhole city.
Yes, we do.
Also, shout out to the icons who have been chilling here the whole time. Adam and Chrissy. Love you guys.
Same. And Buck calls himself a trampa, but I like to call him Trunkle Buck. That's my little name.
I love you, dude.
I love you back. Melissa, do you have any closing comments? Or did you already make them? I don't know.
I think this is fantastic that you are still doing this after everything you've been through. You're going to be more fired up than ever, and I hope to be by your side. And let's get them.
I feel like this is our crew. I mean, honestly, the chemistry among us, that's actually honestly been one of the great things about having to do spaces and like kind of be a little bit restrained the last 6 weeks, is it gave us a great opportunity to test new speakers, because it's a lot better, if you have like a dud, it's way better to have that in spaces than on a live stage in front of a live audience. And believe me, we have had some duds in front of live audiences before. But like the chemistry among us, I think is great. And so I think this is our crew. And I look forward to doing live events with all of you guys. I think you're amazing. And I'll just say quickly too that I think to the point of the last woman who was speaking and talking about like, fear and January 6th got brought up a few times tonight, and it's a source of great frustration to me that, as I mentioned before, I don't think that the media on our side had the open door to me that I wish that they had, because one of the things I really want to show people is it's so much more than just like telling my story and getting information out to people about what's happening. What I want more than anything in the world is to show the conservative community that you can get the shit kicked out of you for an entire year. You can have the entire might of the federal government come down on you and just pound you and destroy your life and rip it to shreds. And you can come back from it and you can keep kicking ass and you can say, is that all you guys got? Because I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere. And so it's a little disheartening that, I at this moment, I don't have as many opportunities as I would like to be able to get that message out. But I am. And so I want people to see that standing up may come at a cost, and, and they may hurt you and they may hurt you really badly, but you can get hurt and you can survive it and you can come back and you can live to kick ass another day. And that's what it's all about. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This was a great space. And next week, I think I'm planning to do an AMA. So just kind of plan on being back at the same place at the same time. Bring your questions. I'll answer any questions you guys have about any topic. And I don't know, Libby, Damien, do you have any closing thoughts?
Just as always, thank you to the panelists. You guys were amazing. This was really a feel-good one for me, so I really enjoyed it. I think you're spot on, Brandon, and this just having all the right in chemistry, and it was just really, really fun. So thank you guys. Thank you to everyone that showed up. Thank you to everyone who stepped forward to ask a question, especially those who may not be in 100% agreement. We really appreciate you all.
Yep, and I'd just like to reiterate those thanks to the panelists and to those who took part. And then I'll do a little bit of a further plug in terms of the pack, because one of the things we are going to be doing is we are going to be putting out advisory boards for certain outreach areas of outreach, and the LGBT community is one of those areas that we're going to be putting together advisory boards. And so we'll be talking to all our panelists, and we'll also be putting out applications for members of the public to take part in those advisory boards to tell us what we are going to be doing when we start to do our outreach for the midterms and the 2024 election. So keep an eye out for that.
Thanks, Damien. And as always, you guys, if you like what we do, if you believe in it as we do, take a minute to go to walkawaycampaign.com, look at our new website. We're proud of it. We think it's really awesome. It gives you kind of a glimpse into just some of the work that we've done over the last couple of years. Please consider making a donation to walkawaycampaign.com. Support the work that we're doing, especially as we get back out on the road doing events. Cost money. We have to reach people. In case you didn't notice, the left is insane. We got to do something about it. So if you, thanks, Buck. If you believe in the mission, please go to walkawaycampaign.com, learn a little bit more about what we do, become a volunteer, make a contribution, and follow everyone on the panel. Take a second to go to everyone's account and give everyone a follow. And